Hello, and welcome to Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
I'm Jason Kwasnicki. A bite at a high price.
And it's Halloween in May. Maybe June. I don't know when this episode's going up. It might just miss May. I'm gonna try my best not to. Anyway, hi! This is Reap the Spoils, your premier monthly Spoilercast podcast show. What we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about a video game. It's in the title of the episode. Alright? It's in the title. So, like, you know what game we're talking about today. If you haven't played that game...
the audience.
What's that?
I said, don't talk down to the audience.
I'm not talking down. I'm sorry, audience, if you think I'm talking down to you. I'm not. I'm just letting you know. Like, if you just pressed play without looking, look at the title, go play that game, then come back, press play on this again. I didn't say to press pause before. Press pause, then look, and then play, then press play. Listen to us talk about this game after you've played it. I don't want to be the thing that ruins this game for you. I want you to go experience it for yourself, and then come listen to us talk about it. So, that being said... Hey, Jason, what game are we talking about?
We're talking about Resident Evil Village, aka Resident Evil 8.
It's actually pronounced Viage.
Viage.
Yeah. It's got like that double.
I mean, if we're doing the whole European thing, there's some I's and they could be I's. It might be L's. There's like two L's, two I's / L's. I don't know.
I remember when this was revealed, I wrote down Resident Evil 8 Village with Roman numerals and everything, and then they had to backtrack that and be like, no, it's not Resident Evil 8, it's Resident Evil Village.
Let's just take a moment to recognize how hilarious the Japanese conception of Europe is. It's just like Europe in air quotes. It's like everything from every corner of Europe thrown together.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that conception later too, or perception, I guess I should say. It's a perceptive thing. Anyway, yeah, we're talking about Resident Evil Village. If you haven't played Resident Evil Village, go pick it up and then play it, and then come back to this episode because we're just gonna spoil the whole game. If you haven't played it, I don't want to spoil it for you. So that being said, this is your final warning, and yeah. Are we ready to jump into a history lesson?
Go for it.
Jason?
It's time for Reap the Spoils.
Okay. All right. So I didn't know this. Development on Resident Evil Village actually began before Resident Evil 7 Biohazard shipped.
Oh, good. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's wild. They started development on this game roughly around August 2016. For reference, Resident Evil 7, which there is a Reap the Spoils episode on. Go check it out. Resident Evil 7 shipped in January 2017, so they started working on this game without knowing whether or not 7 was gonna be a success. And what that means is they kind of just like started conceptualizing and putting together like what they wanted, the setting and and kind of the idea behind Village, which, you know, obviously, as everyone's pointed out, as everyone realizes through playing this game, was heavily inspired by Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4, the first third, roughly, of that game takes place in a village in somewhere in Europe. And you find treasures and shoot them down and sell them to a merchant and get money and buy upgrades and weapons. It's very, very clearly inspired by Resident Evil 4. But then once Resident Evil 7 was a success for the franchise and for Capcom, they decided that Village was going to be a direct sequel, and taking on a lot of 7's sensibilities, the first-person perspective, Ethan Winters as a protagonist, etc., etc. I just think it's really interesting that they started making... this game technically existed before 7 even released.
It makes sense now why, and we'll get into it, why a lot of the stuff feels a little disjointed.
Yeah. Disjointed, that's actually, you couldn't have picked a better way of describing that, given this game and what happens to a lot of Ethan's body parts.
I guess I kind of wanted to put this up front before we get into like anything, because I'm always like the really critical one that's like really nitpicking and being an asshole. This is one of the strangest games I've ever played. I'm going to be extremely, extremely critical of this game. What a game in one of my favorite series of all time. And yet, I have never had so much fun playing a game I know is in so many ways objectively bad. It's almost like
Wow.
it's the gaming equivalent of Transformers, the Michael Bay movies. I
Oh,
fucking
chill.
I fucking love those first three movies, but I know that they're just horrible. Ethan Winters is essentially Shia LaBeouf.
I can't.
All right. Before you get too far, all right, we're still in the
I
middle of
just wanted to preface. I just wanted to preface everything before we get into it.
That he got his hooks in some people.
We're
That's
not
for
even
sure.
we're not even past the history lesson. God damn, Jason.
Oh,
Um,
I thought we were done with the history
no,
lesson.
there's still
Oh
more.
fuck, my bad, guys.
It's all right. Um, so the director Morimasa Sato, and the team, it's pretty well documented what they wanted to create with this game, and we'll definitely talk about this. They wanted to kind of create a theme park of horror and kind of guide the player through several different genres of horror, which I think is very evident in this game.
Oh,
And
yes.
they even considered the village to be a character, which another thing that I definitely want to discuss. Um, but yeah, that some those are some tidbits about the development behind the scenes of the game. The game was revealed at the PS5 event on June 11th. A lot of games that I think a couple games that we've discussed in the past few episodes were revealed at that event. Bug Snacks, Spider-Man Miles Morales. This is another one. I'm sure we'll cover more games that were revealed at that event as time goes on, as more games come out. But anyway, June 11th, 2020 was when this was revealed. It was released May 7th, 2021. In the time leading up to that, I do want to bring this up because it really bothered me. The game received two demos, one in January and one in April. The one in January was a PS5 exclusive.
Yeah.
And here's the problem. Hey, Jason, did you play that demo?
Hell no.
Why didn't you play that demo, Jason?
Well, I didn't. I wasn't. I kept myself completely out of the loop with this game, but I wouldn't have played it regardless because I don't have a PS5.
There, that's the only answer I wanted to hear. Okay, it's the only answer I needed to hear. Delilah and I played the demo. We have PS5s. Not a lot of people do. And they made this a PS5 exclusive demo, much to the chagrin of a lot of my friends, a lot of people that love this franchise. They didn't get to play this demo. And I'll say, like, it was just a tone piece. It was a very straightforward, not even any combat. It was just meant to showcase the setting, the graphics, and give something for people to play.
But like Resident Evil 7, it is referenced the events of that demo in the main game. So if you didn't play it, you're kind of like, what is this?
Briefly, yeah. And then we got another demo in April that was one that was actual vertical slices from the game. And that really pissed me off too, because they split it into two different demos that you could only play at specific times for 30 minutes. And it was just like, I don't know, if you need a chart to understand when you can play a fucking video game demo, you failed.
It was even more convoluted than that. It was like only PlayStation players can play these 30-minute demos. One 30-minute session of the village on Saturday, another 30-minute session of the village on the following of the castle on the following Saturday, and then open up to everyone the following Saturday for 1 hour where you can explore both.
And then
I understand why they did it. It was a marketing thing. They wanted to make it like an event. They wanted to get more eyes on it because they felt like it's like what Nintendo does with their artificial scarcity. You know, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's still fucking stupid.
Yeah, it was just like, I get what you're getting at. Like, yeah, it was a marketing thing, and making an event of it definitely gets people interested. Contrast to that, though, they made it overly complicated. They revealed that demo during a like Resident Evil showcase event on a Thursday. They said, "Oh, we're giving you a demo. You can't play it for 2 more days."
Yeah.
And then the other problem was not everyone is necessarily home on a Saturday night to play this thing. I have friends that work nights.
Right, because it was only available for 8 hours.
Exactly. It was just
Mhm.
it was a messy situation. But I just wanted to touch on that. Something really stupid that I felt needed to be brought up. But let's history lesson over. Final warning, if you haven't played the game, stop listening, go play the game, then resume listening. We're gonna spoil everything. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
All right.
Excited.
That fucking ending. So let's break it down, I guess, bit by bit. I want to start like a little before the ending, really. And I kind of want to start by just having a broad conversation about Chris Redfield in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the question I have is a question definitely on Jason's mind, maybe on yours too, Delilah. Why didn't Chris just fucking tell Ethan at the beginning of the game what was going on?
Because the plot needed him not to.
Exactly. But like that's such a bad reason.
So this was my thing. So, all right, spoiler alert. Obviously, you're in Reap the Spoils. So,
Oh, I should also say, if you haven't played Resident Evil 7 either, this game is heavily circling around Resident Evil 7. It's gonna spoil that
Yes.
game too. So like
Yeah.
make sure you've
Yes.
played 7 and 8. If you've only played this one, you haven't played 7. I don't know why you would have done that, but make sure you know that we're gonna spoil 7 as well.
And we also
maybe
have
other
a
parts
spoiler
of-
cast on 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
so I might be jumping ahead just a tad bit, but I need to connect it to the Chris thing.
It's fine.
So just to go to the main twist, if you will. So Ethan has been dead since Resident Evil 7.
Oh,
He
you
died
are
at the
jumping
beginning.
ahead.
Well, we'll go back to it. We'll go back
Okay.
to it. So the main thrust of the ending is that Ethan dies sacrificing himself. Okay. And at first I thought these two twists, that Ethan was always just a mold monster and that he sacrifices himself. I thought at first playing it, I was like, wow, that was actually pretty well set up. They foreshadow it throughout the game. And it actually has somewhat of an impact because, I mean, the story, the plot is simple enough. You're just trying to save your daughter. So at the end of the day, it's just a story about, or it's intended to be a story about fatherhood, you know, and you even get a trophy. It's like world's best dad, whatever.
Yeah, it's like
And then I thought about it for 30 seconds. And I realized how fucking stupid it makes the entirety of the game's story seem. And it essentially renders the game itself pointless. Because how are there fail states in this game? And going back to Chris Redfield, why didn't he at least tell you after he shoots the fake Mia that it's a fake Mia?
that's
Yeah.
Why there's just way too many plot holes, questions.
That's really what I want to know because like Chris didn't know that Ethan was a dead mold person at that point. He didn't find out until he rescues Mia from her jail cell in Mother Miranda's lab.
And how could he know that Mia is fake and not know that Ethan is a mold monster? Like it's just and even then,
Well,
like
in that
you could have Chris shoot Mia, and it would make sense for him not to tell Chris beforehand to potentially ruin the elements of surprise. But it's like you could easily just rewrite this that maybe Chris was not aware to the full extent of everything that was going on, and he is slowly made aware of the full extent of the events as you're going through the story, because you see abandoned bases and laptops as you go throughout the game of Chris and his team. You know, they're like always one step ahead of you throughout the entire game, and you see the research that they're doing and whatnot regarding the events that are going on. It's just, there were so many ways that this easily could have been fixed, and Why?
So a
I'm at
few
a loss.
so a few things on that. Like they were Chris and his crew were investigating primarily the connections in Europe and Mother Miranda, right? There's no reason I think that they would need to know or be able to know that what the truth about what Ethan is at this point. Um, and he doesn't find out until after the whole ending section or whole ending like scenario is already set in motion.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I want to know is like, yeah, he kills Mia, who he finds out is Mother Miranda. That I understand because they're just focused on discovery on her. They're focused on investigating her, and that's what they found was she's infiltrated that household. That's fine. He kills her. That's fine, or thinks he kills her. That's fine. But there's no reason other than to create drama and other to create like some sort of inciting incident to not tell Ethan about this. His excuse is that he didn't want Ethan to get involved, but like clearly that didn't work. And really, you thought that like this dude didn't see his wife. She went missing
He's
for
involved.
3 years. Yeah, his wife
He's
went missing for
involved
You
from
three
the
years.
made
beginning.
him involved at that point.
Exactly. And I'm just like he went
Here, I
looking
just
for.
shot your wife. Don't get involved, though.
Yo, yeah. Don't worry, it's cool, bro.
And the whole thing is he thought like they thought that Miranda was dead, so they transported Ethan and Rose, their daughter, with the dead body. I guess in the
To
same
Miranda's base of operations. Like,
yeah, and that's another thing is I'm wondering like what I hope we ever get like some sort of answer for this, but they wanted Chris wanted them to move to Europe, and I don't really know why.
I
They'd
thought
already
it was to get away from Louisiana, thinking that whatever was happening there, they just had to get far away from there, but yet they wound up closer to the
well,
crux of the
and the whole
problem.
thing
you
is
could
they
do
knew
you
that.
could do a fucking Goodfellas and go to like fucking Montana or some shit. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
America's bigger than Europe.
it's
Well,
not
actually,
even
is it? Whatever.
it's not even that they needed to stay in America. I just of all places, why would you take them to Europe where you know Miranda and this fucked up village are, where you know the connections are primarily located? I just like don't understand what the reasoning for that was because there was never any intent to involve them in any plan to take down either party. But I digress. He doesn't tell Ethan throughout the entire game after several run-ins where he's just super cruel and mean to him for lack of better words than mean. But like he runs into him at the bottom of the factory, and that's when Chris finally decides, all right, I guess you've come this far. I guess I'd better tell you. And then he's just nice guy Chris again. Where throughout the whole game he was built up to be this brooding, frankly, antagonist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was just played out that way because they wanted you to be confused about whether Chris is a quote unquote good guy or bad guy.
I'm gonna sound
Yeah,
a lot.
they wanted that trailer. They wanted the trailer that hyped that Chris had turned, or not. At least he had some kind of negative. What's the word I'm looking for? Motivation vis-a-vis Ethan. When at the end of the day, you still could have had that trailer, and then immediately after the trailer cuts in the actual game, Chris could have just explained what happened.
And I'm gonna sound a lot like Jason here, but like, yeah, that's just bad writing. That's really bad
Agreed.
writing.
And
Agreed.
that's not even to take into account the ramifications that Ethan being a mold monster has on the entirety of the game and what's going on both in game and in cutscene.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess.
feel like oh sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Delilah.
I was gonna say I feel like it would have been more interesting if they just actually made Chris a problematic character.
Yeah.
Right. Or they had Chris sacrifice himself.
Oh, that would be heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
it's
That would have been
also
a risk.
and it's funny you also bring that up because another part of the marketing angle for this game was that this was a conclusion to his story. That's all they said. and we didn't know who they were talking about. They could have been talking about Chris, Ethan, fucking Carlos from Resident Evil 3. Like, we didn't know. Like, what if Carlos just jumped out of nowhere and helped out and then died? The end of his story. But, like, that's all they...
That came back to life.
Oh, I would love that. Even though it would be totally stupid and contrived, like, I would love that. But, like, yeah, we didn't know which character they were talking about. They would just said his story comes to an end, I think was the exact line that was thrown out in trailers and in the marketing for this game. And it turns out that the person they were talking about was Ethan. But yeah, I get what you're saying, Jason, because I guess let's pivot from Chris and talk about Ethan being a mold person since Dulvey, Louisiana. I get what you're saying about, like, it makes everything kind of pointless. Because if he dies and triggers a game over, well, I mean, he's a mold monster. He's not. Is he really dead?
Right.
But I get it, because they can't just reveal that, like, there's no true end state because he's a mold monster. They have to have some form of failure to still make it a video game that you have to succeed at and progress through in some regard. That doesn't bother me so much.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Delilah.
I was gonna say the other issue I have with him being a mold is, wasn't Evelyn able to control the mold?
That's another thing, yes.
And couldn't she have then controlled Ethan from destroying her and,
Granted,
like, saving Mia?
This is a question I sort of did have about that, because, like, she was forcing him in 7 to, like, hallucinate things and see things that weren't really there. But you're right. You'd think she would have more power over him if he was just a mold monster. And on the other side, this also does explain a lot of things that were kind of unexplained in 7 that we kind of just took for granted. Like, I mean, the fact that
they should have been left unexplained, and I'll get into more of that later.
Like, and what I'm getting at is, like, limbs detaching and being able to reattach them just with, like, the first aid med, the magic juice.
Which could not just heal your limbs, but also your clothing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just medical. It's also sewing, knitting,
so stupid.
knitting juice. But
I mean, clearly, like, that's because it's because they just assembled the character model, and that was part of it, and they just reassembled it that way. I don't know if that was intended to be like a campy Resident Evil thing, or if it was just a game design thing of, it's easier if we leave that sleeve the way it is and then reattach it with the stuff.
And this kind of gets to an essential problem that will pervade a lot of my criticisms at almost every level of this game. So you like you said before, this game obviously takes Resident Evil 4 as an inspiration in many regards. At the same time, it's taking a lot of inspiration from its predecessor. Obviously, it's a direct sequel. Here's the problem. There's an immense tonal clash here. Resident Evil 4 was schlock, but it was good schlock. It was self-aware schlock. It knew when to leave things that were gamey as gamey things. The Merchant being a perfect example. He's just a fucking guy that's there as a game mechanic. It's never explained. I mean, I think he's supposed to be like a Ganado, and it says that somewhere. But, like, who he is, you don't know. He's just a guy selling you guns. This is a game that wants you to take the story seriously, but at the same time, it wants the story to be schlocky, and it wants all of these crazy gamey things to be somehow explained and tied together, and it has to run in circles and create massive holes in logic to do so. And it just comes out as a mess, as opposed to Resident Evil 4, which knew what it was and just ran with that.
Yeah, I agree that the series feels like, and I haven't even played all of the Resident Evil games, but from what I've played, the series seems like it's becoming unnecessarily convoluted. And maybe that's just a result of them keeping multiple openings for future sequels. Or, like, any other long-standing series that's likely to crumble in terms of lore and story if they keep going, because they have to keep finding things to talk about and keep things interesting. But I think it is Resident Evil 8 specifically showed that this game can go a lot of places, but also nowhere because there's so many plot holes at this point. We thought that we were going to get more answers to 7, and now we have more questions.
What I'll say,
so go, Mark.
What I'll say about the convolution, Delilah. I feel like Resident Evil canon and lore has been convoluted for a long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily think this makes it worse, but it definitely doesn't make it much better. And yeah, something I feel like we should really address is, like, we know Resident Evil has kind of always been goofy. I mean, it started as a game in 1996 with, like, horrible voice acting and tons of layers and layers of camp. And it was like that for a long time, and over time, you know, once AAA started ramping up more and more, and the game with it, the series with it, it started trying to take itself more seriously, and that's fine. To a lot of success, I'd say it achieved that. But yeah, I totally agree with the tonal disparity in this game is really all over the place. It's like terrifying and serious, and then suddenly it's like it expects you to find humor, and it kind of almost gives you whiplash in that regard.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ethan being how did you guys feel about the Ethan mold thing, like, on a broad level, I guess? What was your reaction?
Like I said, I loved it at first, and then I thought about it for 30 seconds.
I thought it was a cool twist. I didn't expect the twist, even though now thinking back on it, they were kind of foreshadowing it all the way back to 7. But
Yeah.
and the way they connected it is still cool, like, on the surface, but when you really dig deep into what that could mean for the series and what that could mean for Ethan, it kind of feels a little bit of a mess.
See,
like,
I feel sorry. Finish.
I was just gonna say, like, is he still alive? Like, is he actually alive? We don't, you know.
That's something we'll talk about later.
And going back to what Mark said before about, like, and Delilah, you said as well about explaining things, like Ethan having his limbs cut off and then reattaching them. Going back to what I said about the merchant in RE4, that's a thing specific to video games that doesn't need to be explained. Like, don't try to explain that, because you're not going to in any satisfying way.
I think, to be fair, go ahead. Sorry.
All I was going to say is, you actually have to be a really talented writer to do something that doesn't create ludonarrative dissonance.
To be fair, I don't think I don't want to act as if I think that this twist was written in to explain that. I think that explaining that was a byproduct of this twist.
I agree.
I don't think this twist was created to explain something like that, nor do I think that was something that they had planned from the beginning. I think that they did maybe intend to keep that unexplained, and then this twist kind of folds it in and explains it in some regard. Obviously, we'll never know how it reattaches clothing and fabric, but that's okay. That's one mystery we can leave to
yes.
to the universe. But I think, like, yeah, it's not something that needed to be explained. I used to want an explanation to it, just because the 7 was really aiming for a more hyper realistic world, and not the campy crazy one that we come to expect from Resident Evil. But then I remembered, it is Resident Evil. It doesn't need to be explained. But now we have some sort of explanation. I actually hated this twist at first. I've come around on it a little bit. But like you said, I think it was Delilah brought up, like, how couldn't Evelyn just control him in 7? Like, clearly we now know he was dead from the beginning when Jack killed him, or punched him at the very beginning of the game, basically. Like, how was he not controllable by Evelyn?
Yeah, and it also brings up questions about Mia because she also had the mold, and
She
she did die multiple
she
times
did get
in seven.
the vaccine.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because remember the canon choice when you can either stick Mia or Zoe, the canon choice is Mia.
right.
So she does get stuck with the vaccine and is at that point clear of that. And we also find out she knows the truth about Ethan. Why she does, and here's another question: is
And
why
how
doesn't
does
she?
she know that? Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't even say how does she know that. She's clearly she works for the connections, right? Like I'm not. I don't question her ability to know that he's infected or is a monster of mold or whatever. You know, I don't question her ability to know that. What I question is why didn't she tell him?
Yeah.
Like did she want to hide? Did she want to hide that from the connections because they would just turn him into a bioweapon? Maybe, but I feel like we needed a little more background about that. I feel like
What I question is why did she sleep with him and have a child? Like if you know that, like
because he's still
that must be some good moldy stuff coming out of there. Like
Jesus Christ. He's still her husband. He's still the same person. He's just
yes, I know.
infected
I'm being facetious.
with this parasite. Um and it's seemingly not a it's not like the oh god, what is it? What's the parasite in 4 called? Las Plagas, Jesus Christ. It's not like the Las Plagas where it's like it's actively trying to kill people and turn them into these parasitic monsters, clearly. It's just what this seems to be is it just seems to be a sort of networked parasite where it all comes back to that single point of contact. So it's not like he was any threat or active threat that she that Mia saw as long as he was kept hidden from the people that seemingly would have wanted him.
Yeah.
But anyway, continuing along with the ending, Ethan goes and confronts Mother Miranda, who the whole plot of this game was she was trying Mother Miranda. This isn't something I've not necessarily covered in the notes, but Mother Miranda as an antagonist, um, she's old. She was alive over a century ago. And her daughter passed away of during
The Spanish influenza,
yeah,
1917.
yeah. So she's trying to find a way. The way she discovered the mega mycete was she actually went to commit suicide and discovered that and it got infected with it and thought maybe I can use this to bring my daughter back to life.
By the way, none of this is actually in the game. I mean, it is in the game. You have to read the notes that you
Yeah,
find scattered about.
a lot of it is.
And they're all in that one section right before you fight her.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mother Miranda's lab covers a lot and includes another big thing that I want to talk about. It's kind of foreshadowed throughout the game, but it's really obviously revealed in that lab. But for like the past century, she's been experimenting, taking pieces of the megamycete called Kadu and performing experiments by putting them in the villagers and seeing what happens to them, trying to find a suitable host for her resurrected daughter. And over a century later, she lands on Ethan and Mia's daughter, Rose. Was this? How did you guys like when when it finally became clear of what she wanted with Rose and what those jars were and what the end goal for Miranda was? Like how did she come off as a villain to you guys? Was she compelling in any way?
So the underlying conceit is actually really awesome, I think, because it's very simple. A father fighting for his daughter to save her, who's still alive, versus a mother who is driven mad by the grief over her dead daughter. That's a great setup. And
Hmm.
honestly, despite the fact that the ending, um, and everything that comes with what happens with Ethan, him being a mold monster, or whatever, and him sacrificing himself, even though it's kind of nonsensical when you think about it, there's still some dramatic payoff there. Like there's still some feels because of just the primordial nature of it. It's a father fighting for his child. So I will give it that much credit. But the problem here is that Mother Miranda is quite literally absent from the game with very few exceptions until the last 20 minutes. And if you want to know why she's doing anything she's doing, you have to read the shit in that lab. Like if you're just a normie and you just run through there without reading anything, you have no idea what the fuck she's doing, why she's
Or why, yeah.
doing. Yeah, like
Or even what makes her kind of an interesting villain in any way.
yeah, exactly. Like the story is interesting, and it could have had it been better executed, it would have been she would have been a great villain.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think someone needs more motivation than that. But what is for everything that I like in this game, there's something about it that also confuses me or throws me off. So like, you don't need any more reason than that for motivation to do what you're doing. But then what it sets up for the enemies in this universe is all over the place. Like you got lichens, you got people with bugs coming out of them because the Kadu impregnated them, and that's what happens apparently. And so it's really hard for me to wrap my head around what this experimentation that she has done is creating for the bigger Resident Evil world.
A lot of that I feel has to do with I guess we'll talk about it later in other discussions about different parts of the game. I think that has more to do with the fact that we've gone seemingly from bioweapons to borderline magic. Is something that I felt with this game.
I mean,
But
so
again, we'll talk about that later.
they've always kind of Resident Evil went to explain a lot of this stuff. They've always kind of incorporated
Comic book science.
yeah, like I was gonna say pseudoscience, but yeah, comic book science is actually a great way of putting it. Like the way they explain Lady Dimitrescu's daughters is like they were it was bugs
They're
that
they're flies. They're
eventually
giant groupings of flies.
yeah
Yeah.
they were flies that ate a person alive and eventually became that person and like was had them born anew as just a mass of insects. I think Lady Dimitrescu's story was that she had a really rare blood condition,
Yes.
and with her getting infected with the Kadu, like she had a thirst for blood, and that's how they explain her becoming a modern vampire, so to speak. Even though she's not a true vampire, she has characteristics of one.
And some of them are well done like that, but then it's a fine line, and the series has always done a good job, in my opinion, walking it. But in this game, it starts pushing it to the point of breaking, especially when like you have a guy that's essentially Magneto. I mean, talking about comic book science, like
yeah, and I think that was like he suddenly was able to control magnetic fields, and yeah, it's
That's
the
what I mean.
same.
It's so all over the place. It just feels endless. Like that. Like the options are endless of whoever has this could do inside of them. Like what their powers could be, which opens up things for future games, but also just kind of feels like a mess. Like it helped.
it doesn't feel like Resident Evil.
It doesn't feel like Resident Evil, and but what it did help with, and we'll get to this more in gameplay, is increasing enemy design, enemy types. We had a bunch of
Yeah.
enemy types, which is a complaint in 7. So I think that was a good thing, but it also just kind of made like what like now they have to find these comic book pseudoscience reasons as to why people have different mutations from this Kadu. And it just seems endless. Like, are we gonna have a giant octopus one day because somebody has a weird strange of, I don't know, the coronavirus that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like we could
Technically, Resident Evil 5.
I did not play that one, although I know
Oh
this.
man, yeah, that's true.
But a Cthulhu monster is totally fine, or like Resident Evil 4 Del Lago. These are explained in ways that are like you said, Mark, pseudoscience, but like okay, there's a logic to it that is biological in nature. Like
I don't
manipulating magnetic fields just seems like magic.
I think so. I think with yeah, I think it's more so like that's an outlier, right? Like Heisenberg's ability
Yeah.
to do that is an outlier compared to, I think, Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters, pretty well explainable,
Yes.
pretty
Yes.
understandable. And I would even say the same. I would say the same for Donna, and I'd say the same for Moreau.
Yes.
I think Heisenberg is just the single outlier that's kind of pushing it into, is this really a mutation or is it just straight up a superpower?
Right.
Right.
Um, so I think I don't think this game is any more wacky than like most past Resident Evils, where they suddenly just grow 20 times their body mass to become this big disgusting monster. Um, like Resident Evil 6, issues with that game everyone has aside, like was definitely guilty of that, but that wasn't what bothered everyone about that game.
Hmm.
I think it's just that one single example is definitely thought provoking as to what they were really going for with this title. But if you take Heisenberg out of the equation, like everything's pretty well explainable in a weird Resident Evil way. Um, and it does lead a lot to a lot of really good enemy variety. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. We got super sidetracked. Um,
Yeah. Sorry about that. That
so
was
yeah,
my
we
fault.
were talking about Mother Miranda, and I think we've all pretty much given our thoughts on that. What I kind of want to talk about is still related to her. I want to talk about the foreshadowing throughout the game and the eventual revelation of how this game and how this setting and how Mother Miranda is connected to the rest of the series, which is we find out that our very good friend Oswell Spencer was once a protege of hers, and Mother Miranda is kind of inadvertently the cause of the entire series.
Exactly.
The umbrella logo is directly ripped the village's sigil, from her own personal brand, frankly. With the crow feathers kind of in that X formation, forming somewhat of an umbrella, Mutamycete in the center. And we see several references to Spencer throughout the game, but the one that really reveals it is in her lab. It's a letter directly from him saying, like, I was really inspired by your experiments and taking human evolution to the next level. And yeah, like, how did you guys feel about this? It's a smaller twist, but it's really huge, right?
Yeah, I hated it. Um, c- One of the reasons I love Resident Evil 4, at least story wise, is it's largely disconnected from everything else. But there are subtle connections that if you're looking for them or if you're well versed enough, you'll pick up on. And obviously, over the years, they added extra content like those the Ada missions and whatnot that came out with like the PS2 and the Wii versions and so on and so forth. But I liked how isolated
I
Resident
mean,
Evil 4 feels
even with that
from the
stuff,
series.
even with the Ada stuff, it's very isolated.
Yeah.
That doesn't tie it back all that much, you know?
But yeah, I mean, there's still some umbrella corporations like Salazar, or yeah, Salazar, not Salazar. Sadler is trying to sell his thing, the Las Plagas, to Umbrella, and that's expected. That's how every
Well,
Resident
really,
Evil had
he's trying to get
ended at that point.
he's trying to get Ashley back to the spoilers for Resident Evil 4. He's trying to get Ashley uh
Back with the Plagas, yeah,
yeah.
infected in her. But I mean, at the end of the day, Resident Evil 4 was always kind of its own thing, and I'm not saying you had to have this game be totally disconnected, especially considering it's a direct sequel to 7. But did you really need to make it like a proto prequel, like, and retcon not retcon, but like give some weird explanation that the entire series is due to a woman in grieving stumbling into a cave on a giant blob of fungus? Like,
So it's funny. I hated it at first. I've come around on it, and kind of almost. I think I actually kind of like it as an addition to the franchise. Because I'm not opposed to them tying things in the canon a little better. I feel like if you're gonna tell a story within a franchise, especially if it's a numbered title, it should have deeper ties into it. And I think this was a really big tie back. You
Hmm.
know, going all the way back to the founder of the big corporation that really caused all this mess for so long. It's a really bold move, but I think it's interesting, and I'd be interested to see if and how they take it further in the next game. Delilah, you look like you want to say something.
I, I guess this is another example of something that I kind of like, but also there's things about it that I don't like because of what it means for the future of the series. If this was the person that okay, essentially created Umbrella, sort of. If that's the case, then why is she dead now? Like, why? I feel like I want more from her. Like, can she maybe not be dead
Well,
so
I
we
guess
can
that's
like
sorry.
learn more about beside okay, we know her motivation. I guess we don't really need to dig deeper than her daughter died. I just maybe want to get to know her a little more because
Hmm.
I don't know shit about her besides from the notes that I read.
I think
That
I think the problem is like she it was all inadvertent, right? Like
Yeah.
she was a mentor to Spencer, and he left, and she stayed in her very remote village, hidden somewhere in Europe, that seemingly no one comes and goes from, right? And that's kind of what they really wanted to hammer home, was that this is a very small pocket in a continent that is just very hidden off from the rest. I mean, we're in 20. I think the game takes place in 2021, or is it 2020? I can't
It would
remember.
be three years, so
Three
2017.
3 years. Okay, 3 years. So that would be
Yeah,
um
2020.
yeah, 2020. Okay, so yeah, it's 2020, and this is still a small. This is a small village, with everyone living as if they lived in the 1800s,
yeah.
maybe even earlier. You know,
Hmm.
it's a very remote section. So how did Spencer find that place? How did he leave that place? How did no one else find it? And really, what I want to know is, yeah, this Mega Mycete's been there. She's been experimenting on these people. How did the BSAA, how did Umbrella or whomever never find this place? Past when Spencer was there. I guess why did he never go back? Did he want to keep it as remote as possible? There's a lot of questions there that I do want to know answers to. Whether or not we'll get
Yeah.
them, who knows? And honestly, it could be released in like a book and like some behind the scenes book.
Okay, yeah.
They did put out a I wanted to read it in time for this episode. I didn't get a chance to. They Dark Horse did publish a document file book for Resident Evil 7 that I think gives more insight into that game and everything. I haven't gotten a chance to look through it yet, but like they could do that for this, and that gives us more context and history behind Miranda. Who knows? Or maybe we'll get a DLC, a conversation we'll talk about later, to further flesh out the character and the story.
Yeah, I think this game period had too many characters that I wanted to know more about. Whereas 7 felt very contained, like it was just the Baker family, really. And I felt like I don't know, I felt like I was able to sit with what happened with them more so than these characters. I'm like, oh, that's a cool character. Oh, I want to know more about this character. And then boom, we're on to the next section, which introduces us to a new character. And it just felt kind of like a mess. And don't I feel like I'm shitting on this game. Don't get me wrong. I really had a lot of
Feels
fun
like
with
we're
this
all
game.
No,
shitting on
this
this
is why
game.
this is why I said what I said earlier
Yeah.
is that never have I ever played a game that I loved so much and had so much fun with
Yeah,
that I know it's fucking not great.
like all of these lore elements did a lot for gameplay, but it didn't do much for Resident Evil story.
Well, story-wise, I would say, yeah, 7 definitely, I agree with you, Delilah. 7 definitely was more not just contained, but because it was contained, it was able to focus in, and you actually had an arc, not just for your main character, but also for the Baker family.
Well, I think
Like there
Yeah.
was that interesting twist where at the end, like they kind of come forward and they're actually good people just trapped in this terrible situation.
that's the key difference, I think, right? Is that this is the Baker family versus Mother Miranda and her four lords, right? They like she kind of creates her own surrogate family by making those four lords. Moreau constantly thinks that or that they're all, her daughters and sons. But
It's a cult.
they're not a real family versus the Baker
Yeah.
family, which was a real family that was corrupted by this mutamycete. There's a big difference there, right? That we have an actual family versus a fake formed together family, but really these are all people with their own individual histories, their own individual characters.
Yeah.
Um,
And none of them really get, I mean, we'll go into it, but none of them really get the time to explore it enough. There was way too much going on. Like you said before in the history, the team wanted to make a theme park of
yeah.
horror, but it very much was a theme park of horror. Like
Hmm.
you're on the roller coaster for a minute or two, and then you're done with it, and it's like, well, we didn't really dive into that at all. Like
Yeah.
now it's on to the next area in wherever you are, Busch Gardens, Disney World, whatever. Like literally, like because each area is its own thing, and it's like Busch Gardens, you got your Germany, but Bavarian area, you got your Italian
You
area.
walk into a certain area of the village and there's just that like Six Flags guy starts dancing. You hear the music
Yeah,
of Six Flags. All right, let's continue on with the ending so we can jump to some of those other points that we want to talk about. Ethan sacrifices himself uh to save Chris, Mia, and Rose. I actually thought that was an emotional scene. Where he kind of pushes Chris away and takes the detonator and goes to confront Miranda, says his goodbye to Chris and Rose. That was really emotional in spite of it all.
yeah.
And
That's what I was saying. Yeah,
it was really well executed. Um but yeah,
I think that's why I liked it at first, but then
yeah.
I thought about it.
And he seemingly sacrifices himself, like, and it's left up to interpretation again, something we'll get to a little later, whether or not he's actually gone or not. But they Chris, Rose, and Mia wind up escaping on a helicopter where uh Ethan goes and detonates and blows the whole village up, blows the Mega Mycete up, blows Miranda up. It's all gone now. And we get another big revelation on that helicopter. This wasn't super explained where Chris is kind of at this point in Resident Evil, because in Resident Evil 7, as we found out through playing Not a Hero, free DLC, if you haven't played that, go play it. Um, we find out that he's at that point in the story, he's still with the BSAA, but he's working. He's kind of freelanced out to this new reformed Blue Umbrella to go find Lucas and all that. He's still with the BSA at that point. And what we kind of come to find out is that he's not with the BSAA anymore. This was actually something that I found out more about. I hate that this was a deluxe edition thing. Don't think it was in the base game, but there was this
Yeah,
Dolby.
because as far as I'm aware, or as far as I was aware, he was still with the BSAA.
Yeah, so in this, I believe the deluxe edition only came with this thing. Maybe it was included in the base game. I hope so. It came with two things. It came with the tragedy of Ethan Winters concept art and a Dolby incident report, which was like an 80-page document you could read through
Mm.
from the bonuses menu, and it was written by Zoe in universe, written by Zoe, and it was her trying to piece together how the Dolby incident from 7 was covered up, where everyone is now, what's going on, who the connections are, etc., etc. And part of that towards the end was about Chris, and it kind of explains what's going on with Chris, where we find out Chris was taking his own squad out on their own skirmishes without BSAA approval, which is called the Hound Wolf Squad, which I think is a really dumb name, but that's what Chris's group is called, the Hound Wolf Squad.
As Genos would say in One Punch Man, Master, who could have such a redundant name?
Um, so the Hound Wolf Squad is Chris's group. He kept taking them out on their own ops without BSAA approval, and seemingly distance was being placed between Chris and the BSAA, and he wound up completely separating himself, taking that group with him, and they're now rogue agents, seemingly trying to investigate the connections and find out more about Miranda. And obviously that leads directly into this game. So what they come to find out in that last section where you're playing as Chris, a BSAA helicopter flies in from above, and they seem to go and attack the Megamycete as well. And what you find out on the helicopter, they have a BSAA soldier who's incapacitated, and he's a bioweapon. Which is interesting, because the BSAA, Chris was a founding member, and it's an anti-bioweapon group.
Right.
They were formed to fight against bioweapons.
Yeah, this goes back to Resident Evil 5, correct?
Yep.
That was the first game where we were introduced to this organization.
Yeah. Unless it's in one of the animated movies, but even so, that would have come out after 5. 5 is the first canonical thing to have the BSAA, as far as I know, and Chris is a founding member of that organization.
Yeah, so this obviously raises a lot of questions. Did Chris know that they were working on bioweapons?
No, I think it's pretty clear. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
I think his reaction to that revelation, I think it's pretty clear that he was taken aback by that fact.
So then who, like, at what point and who was responsible for kind of making the organization go in that direction? Like, they showed the body and then that was it,
right?
You know?
Right.
I don't know.
And how many bioweapons are there?
Yeah, we're getting to a point where, like, everybody in Resident Evil needs to have, like, a power level scanner on their eye. Be like, oh my god, this bioweapon's power level has exceeded 7,000! Like,
so many anime references from Jason today.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it seems to be. I think this is going to play really big into the sequel. Obviously, I mean, we got the revelation right at the end of the game. It's not. There's no time to address it then. So obviously, this is a setup for what's to come next. At least as far as Chris's story is concerned. So I like. Was this a meaningful reveal to you guys?
The bioweapon?
Yeah.
Or Rose? Oh, no, because it literally is given like 30 seconds.
I mean, I think
it's like a DLC hint. I was thinking more than anything.
Wait, who's a bioweapon?
That the BSAA is using bioweapons.
It's not useful to me at this point, no. But I want it to be useful information for hopefully a sequel, but in a way that's not too crazy, because we're already in Crazy Town right here.
See, it would have been more interesting if there was more playtime as Chris, and this was something that popped up earlier. I mean, you would have to change. We'll talk about it later, but there's just so much I would have done that I'll insert here and there. But that's something that, like, you don't just bring up in the last 30 seconds and then not address any of it. I mean, obviously, we know that there's probably going to be a DLC about it, but
maybe maybe there'll be a DLC, or I mean, I still genuinely think it's being held for the next game, and I think it's a good tease, right? It's a good tease of what's to come. It's a good a good hint, I guess, of what how. Kind of gives a little more context about how clear that divide between Chris and that organization was going. He wasn't aware of that, and they're kind of doing something that completely goes against why they were formed. Meanwhile, Chris is still very much like, no, fuck bioweapons. My homies hate bioweapons. I'm gonna go and try to stop more of them because you guys
But
seemingly don't have my back on that anymore.
do we think that that's why he divided from the organization, or do you think he did that just for, like, why did he decide
I
to
mean,
discover
seemingly,
Miranda on his own?
yeah, I maybe the connections are in cahoots with um the BSAA. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's maybe a good theory.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
again, there's so much going on here
Do we
that
think that there's a chance that Mia might have some involvement there? Like,
could be. I
I think
mean, she's kind of
I,
a
I
double
think
agent,
she's
right?
she's too quiet this game. She's not
Well,
emotional enough for
I
me.
think that's because they just like we only see her for all of 2 minutes at the
yeah,
end because she was
I
locked in a
think she's
jail
largely
cell.
done. I think she's largely done along with Ethan. Not like
Hmm.
dead, but like I don't think we're really gonna
Done
see
in
her
the
again.
yeah. I guess we can pivot off of that to the next point that I want to talk about is we get um quite a bit of an epilogue that I wasn't expecting, seemingly jumping, I want to say roughly 15 years in the future
Mm.
with a grown-up Rosemary at at Ethan's grave. Um she goes to talk to him and she's picked up by an agent of unknown affiliation. I don't think we really know. Seemingly he's affiliated with Chris,
Right, that's what I
um
thought.
because she, gets a little heated with the guy. He calls her Evelyn and she's like, I could do things even Chris doesn't know about. So it makes me think that she is that she and that agent are somehow involved with Chris, whatever he's doing at this point in time. Um but they get into an escort vehicle and go to drive up the path, and we see an unknown passerby coming down the road in the opposite direction, and the car seemingly stops at that person, and then cut the black.
Yeah. So, I mean, would
Before
we?
we get into the meat of
Yeah.
it, can I just ask because this confused me?
Okay.
So Evelyn was Miranda's daughter, right?
Well, that's something. That's also something we should talk about. Eva or Ava was
Ava,
Miranda's daughter.
Miranda's daughter.
Evelyn,
Evelyn was from Seven.
well, yeah, and Evelyn, how Evelyn connects to this is it's good that you brought this up because I almost forgot to bring this up and it's important. Evelyn was a failed attempt at bringing Ava back to life.
Right,
She
right,
was a failed experiment. She was the first like true experiment that they where they really tried it. She failed. That's why she's E-001.
right.
She's like the first. She's like the first attempt. It was a failure because she wasn't truly taking on the personality or the persona of Miranda's daughter, and she was
Mhm.
obsessed with building her own family, and that's how the connections ultimately took her as their own bioweapon that they had under their belt. They went to go and transport it to the United States to keep it away from
Right.
another organization seemingly after it, maybe the BSAA. Who knows?
So this was my question and what confused me because he calls her Evelyn. Um, so is it implied that I don't get was he just doing it as an insult? Is it implied that
I think
Rose was actually a reincarnation of Ava?
Well,
Like,
I took it
yeah.
as. Go ahead, Delilah.
No, I was gonna say I thought he was just being a dick, like
yeah,
because she was the chosen one for Miranda's next daughter, right? That was her
right.
attempt there. So he's I think he was just being a dick. Why he was being a dick and why Chris would allow Rose to be escorted by this guy
Well,
who's treating her like shit. Is like, mhm.
she seemingly escaped on her own to go visit the grave. We saw her on a bus going there herself, and he was there to pick her up. And even she was like, "Oh, speaking of, look who it is."
Yeah.
Um, I think I took it as she technically was used in a ritual to bring Ava back to life. She already was definitely born as a molded because she's Ethan's spawn. So I'm guessing the combination of those two things, like she definitely is in and of herself a bioweapon. There, whoever she's under clearly knows that, and that guy, yeah, like Delilah said, was being a dick. You know, she's born from that ritual.
And to be fair, she does hint that she has powers. Like
that's another thing.
She grabs him. She grabs him and shoves him against Gar and is like, "My power level is over 7,000." No, she's like, I think what she says is, "I have powers you wouldn't even know about," or something like that.
That even
or
Chris doesn't
even
know about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So seemingly she has abilities of her own. I guess that she's in control of. So,
which is interesting too, because there's a note in the beginning of the game when Rose is a baby and you're in Ethan and Mia's house that says that they did tests on Rose and she was not, there was no mold or any infection on her.
So maybe she being Ethan spawn doesn't matter. But after the ritual, I mean, she did definitely go through the ritual. No matter what, whether it's because she was born from Ethan or she went through that ritual, she was a reincarnation, a failed reincarnation of Ava. She would have gotten powers that one way or the other, or powers is how we're putting it. But you know what I mean.
She could be Supergirl at this point for all we know. Like she's the spawn of a mold monster and a former mold monster. Like they could just say like Ethan had some super jizz and made a Supergirl. Like
yeah, I think her maybe have like being a product of Mia and Ethan, who both had the mold at some point. Well, Ethan still has it. Made her more of a fitting host for Mother Miranda's experiment.
Right.
Yeah. But
it's so convoluted and confusing.
Yeah.
And unclear.
The real thing I want to talk about, though, we talked about the one part of that epilogue that I definitely wanted to touch on. The other part is they stop at that person far off in the distance. We can't see who it is. Who dat?
So the character model has been definitively shown to be Ethan's character model.
Yes.
They went in and somebody modded the game to blow it up.
Photo mode. They were able to tweak that.
Yeah. Most people, though, just assume that they just took the character model, A, because it's something they already had constructed, and B, because it has a nice, like, dramatic ending to it. It's the father watching the daughter pass by.
Well,
because they pretty definitively say the father's story is over.
Yeah, right. So I guess I guess my question is, do you think it's actually Ethan, and more so, who do you think it is? Who could it be?
I was speculating it's Mother Miranda because she could kind of shapeshift.
Well, she's seemingly dead. She got blown sky high with the Megamycete.
I figured that too, but God, it's Resident Evil, so who knows?
Yeah, really.
No, me personally, I just took it as a kind of Return of the Jedi moment where Luke is looking out and sees all the Jedi spirits. Like it's just the father looking off his daughter.
So you think
it was just a nice little thing.
You think it was much more a spiritual thing than a...
Yeah, it was just a nice send-off moment.
But then why did the car stop?
Yeah.
Like, it just felt so
I didn't
purposeful.
see. That's the thing. Everybody says the car stopped. I didn't.
You're taking it as a freeze frame?
Yeah, I didn't feel like the car stopped. Like it was kind of, you're looking over the horizon, and it just looked like it was at the same place it was before the body came in. So I don't know.
If that's the case, then I feel like then they executed it in a way that makes you question that. Because I feel like had it been a spiritual thing, it would have been a lot more like
explicit,
like sunsetty and explicit. Like not this figure all the way in the distance. It would have been more of like an opaque figure, something more peaceful. It felt a little ominous to me, but that could just be my take considering she just came from the grave. Like he would have shown up at her grave if it was spiritual. I think not when they're driving off, but after she gets bullied by this dude.
I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want to show Ethan's face.
And they they never officially have, I don't think. Which is like even the model, the figure that you can unlock in the game still has his face blocked out, which is like so.
That's hysterical.
We have concept art. We have official renders of his face. Like why? you're trying to make him into this character. You can show that he has a face.
Well, that's a weird thing, and I don't know if you want to segue. That might be a good segue. To the next point is that they, again, like the tonal dissonance that we were talking about earlier with Ethan. There's like this character dissonance where they want to make a character, and at the same time they want to have a Gordon Freeman type player insert. Like,
I think that was less obvious in this game versus 7. I think 7 was much more. I mean, even then they did try to make Ethan into a character in 7. It just wasn't as much of a character as he was in this game. If you catch what I'm saying.
The
There's
Leon,
a lot more dialogue.
Yeah,
the Leon Kennedy-esque one-liners were very disappointing.
I thought some of them were really good.
You're the one that's cursed.
That one was okay.
So cringe.
That's like the weak.
There were a lot of cringe.
You picked out the weakest one. I like the one
All right,
where
what's a good one though? What's a good one?
Like,
I can't think of.
I forget who he killed, but he was just like, eat shit. It's like, I love that. No, I like the one after he kills Moreau, where he's like in life in death as he was in life, disgusting or something along those lines. And I
felt like that was mean. I liked Moreau.
Yeah,
I felt bad.
Well, everyone was so mean to Moreau.
Sad boy.
Let's just all agree that none of it beats. So your right hand comes off.
Yeah, he was more of a character in this game. I don't feel, especially in this game, looking back, I don't feel like even in 7, like, going first person doesn't necessarily mean that they're intentionally trying to make a player insert.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I
think my problem was that all they really needed to do was give you the motivation of finding your daughter. That's a powerful enough motivation.
I think what was more, a lot of people are memeing on this already anyway, but like, I think what's even more annoying is just like Ethan's personality. A lot of it seems to boil down to disbelief of the situation that he's in, despite having been in this situation before.
Right.
He'll see something grotesque and be like, "What the fuck was that?" He'll see something.
Yeah.
What is this?
Especially because now
goes,
he supposedly has like combat training. That's
the
other thing.
Yeah, and that's another question that I have that goes along with why move them to Europe. Like, why give him combat training and then still not tell him the plan, not fill him in, or do this, do that. Like, why? Like, no matter what, he's going to be involved. You might as well tell him what's going on, and maybe he can help.
All right, Ethan, just sit down, have a joint. I'm gonna lay it out. I'm gonna double tap your wife. It's gonna be cool. Just chill.
No. Like, he doesn't even have to tell him prior to doing that. That's fine. But like,
no, I know.
You know what I'm saying? Like, after they do that, they could have just told him what was going on, but they didn't, and they didn't again, and they didn't again, and then finally, when it's just him and Chris, that's finally when Chris was like, "All right, you've been through so much. I guess I'll tell you." And then he's just buddy with him again, and then involves him in the plans. Like, you should have just done that from the beginning, you doofus.
Yeah, that could have solved everything, but suspense, mystery.
Yeah,
that's where they were going.
Sorry, I didn't
now
mean
I'll
to double
tell you.
back on that.
And as long as I'm letting you in on everything, here's a battle mech that you can use to fight the next boss.
Yeah.
I want to know though, how would you guys feel if that figure at the end was Ethan? Like,
what do you mean?
Like at the end of the last end credit scene, walking towards the car. Like, would it disappoint you if you found out that that's Ethan alive still?
I don't think it would disappoint me. I mean, obviously we won't know until the next game or maybe a DLC, but I think that'll be in the next game or addressed in the next game, if anything.
I wouldn't be surprised if they made Ethan the villain of the next game and you had to kill him.
As Rose?
Yeah.
That could be really cool. But also it's like I don't think it can be Ethan. Because like you got like I think it was you, Delilah, that said like his story is over. The father's story is done.
Yeah, Jason said that, but yeah, they kind of made it explicit.
Yeah. Like, to the point where even after that epilogue is done, they even have it on the screen. The father's story is done. And then you have to press a button and then you get a results screen.
that's why I said like I think they just used the character model A because they had it, and
Yeah.
B for sentimental purposes.
It's very possible. Yeah, I don't know that I'd be pissed or disappointed. I would definitely question that decision, and I should hope that they have a good reason for bringing him back, should they decide to do so.
Maybe the BSAA recovered his body and made him a bioweapon.
Yeah. Or maybe we're just all wrong, and maybe it's Leon for some fucking reason.
Dude, I want Leon. Leon,
We're
oh my
getting
God,
a
I want
hey,
some Leon.
we're getting a Netflix series in a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Leon.
that does look good.
Yeah.
It would have been cool to just show Leon though. That would have been spicy if
Yo,
that's
what
the
if
case.
Leon? What if
Hey.
Leon was her bodyguard at the end?
You know what?
Oh boy.
Here's a conversation topic. I'm not sure that you guys know. By the way, I highly recommend after you beat the game, you're gonna get a lot of completion points for doing challenges. Go into the extra content shop and buy all the concept art, and
Yeah.
then look through all the concept art. Because not only is there a trophy for doing it, but they have art director's notes for every single piece of art. And besides looking at the art and appreciating it, it gives a lot of really interesting details.
Mhm.
This piece of art was included in the Tragedy of Ethan Winters concept art set. Again, I don't know if that was a deluxe edition exclusive thing or if that's in everyone's game. So hopefully you can get that and look through it, because there's a piece of concept art in there that has a spicy reveal of something that was gonna be in this game.
Yeah, there were a lot of changes made from what I understand.
Well, yeah, there were, and a lot of them are really interesting. But the one that's relevant to what we were just talking about, originally, someone that was going to be a big player in helping Ethan and infiltrating the village was Ada.
Mm.
That would have been dope.
Originally, Ada was going to be undercover and in disguise. And you can't have a Resident Evil game, with Ada Wong without Leon Scott Kennedy, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like those two are just they're always together. So yeah, it's an interesting bit that they cut out, but that was originally in the works. But we can move on from that. We still have quite a bit to discuss.
Yeah.
I guess let's talk about this. Let's talk about this theme park of horror aspect. We could start off with a simple one. What was your guys' favorite of the four, really five areas, I'd say? Because I count the Stronghold as an area, even though it didn't have to do with one of the lords. So, like, not that I think the Stronghold is, like, anyone's favorite, but
the game, in my opinion, peaks in the first area, and I think that's one of its major pacing problems.
I think it peaks in the second, but...
Well,
Yeah.
depends what you're...
Yeah, no. I know, yeah.
Yeah, I think holistically, from every point of view, from gameplay, and in my personal opinion, aesthetic, it's the first area. But I do agree with what you're saying about, at least what I think you're saying about the second area.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished the castle section, I was like, oh my God, I just wanted more. This happened too fast.
Yeah.
And then I got to the Beneviento house and I was like, yo, this is the best part of the game.
It would have been awesome if there was like a dungeon section that functioned like that within the castle. I just think the castle should have been more of the game. I don't know.
Well, I think
I did want more castle for sure.
I think everyone expected that, right? Like that
was the problem.
Yeah.
The marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really that was I would still say that the castle was probably the longest of the theme park attractions, we'll call them. That it was probably the longest and meatiest one because it harkened back to classic Resident Evil setup of you're in a mansion, you're uncovering and you're going into rooms and clearing them out and finding pieces of puzzles to go into other areas. Although this still had less of that running around and getting lost, which is probably my biggest disappointment with this game. The structure of the village, the structure of all the levels, it's all too linear. There's no getting lost in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Even the puzzles, even House Beneviento, where it was an escape the room puzzle. It was very much
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
escape the room. You're in this room with this mannequin. You're finding ways to uncover more pieces of it, to uncover other pieces in other rooms, so that you can escape. Which was great, but there wasn't really any getting lost in it. It was still very simple.
Yeah, the
The
solution was just hit X on the body until you have all the pieces you need to get
yeah.
out. Like,
The the most sophisticated puzzle was the bell puzzle in the castle, and
Yeah.
even that
yes.
wasn't that bad in comparison to previous Resident
Yeah.
Evil games.
That harkened back to some of the more simpler puzzles from Resident Evil 4.
I will give this credit. It had more puzzles and more meaningful puzzles than 7 did. Because 7
Yes.
7 I mean, if you go back and listen to our Resident Evil 7 episode, that was probably one of my biggest complaints about the game proper, and that I feel doesn't really hold up well, is that um it doesn't have many puzzles, and the puzzles it has are too simplistic. The shadow plinths, they're not difficult. You have to find
Yeah,
the thing and
that
you have to place it the right place in light. It's not hard.
yeah, that had also one puzzle set piece, the Happy Birthday, that was sophisticated.
Yeah, and that was, again,
That was an escape room. Yeah.
and it was great. But there wasn't much of anything. This game definitely had more, but it still was just too simple.
Yeah.
And the level design in general was just too linear. Like, even the castle, it's a linear path until you can open up another further part of the linear path. Um, there's no getting lost. There's no 3 or 4 different ways you could go, and maybe finding pieces out of order that you have to place in other sections of the castle, while avoiding monsters or Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters. There really just wasn't any of that. It was just very, very
Yeah,
simple.
I think technically you could fight the latter two daughters in the castle in
different
whichever one you
orders.
wanted to do
Hmm.
first.
No, I,
But I
I don't think you
agree.
could.
You could, yeah. My first
Oh, the
playthrough,
latter
I
two.
fought.
The
Yeah, the
latter two,
latter
yeah,
two. The
yeah.
Yes,
first one
okay.
is very scripted for sure because you're in that basement
Mhm.
area. But the brunette and the redhead could be approached in any order.
That's true, because you get
Yeah.
the key that unlocks either of those rooms. I
Yeah,
guess I always just did the same order every single time, and I never realized that you could do the one I was doing third, second, if I really wanted to. But
yeah.
that is true. That's a good point. But it's
I
still,
yeah, I largely agree with everything you're saying, and
Mhm.
just to echo what I was saying before, I wish the game had been basically having the village as a home base and you bouncing back and forth between the castle and the village and incorporating elements from the other areas into the castle, expand the castle, make it basically a huge version of the Spencer Mansion. Like,
well, I think that's kind of the thing, right? Is in doing this theme park of horror, they very much set up these several main attractions, and they had you do them like, and they tied them to the four lords. So the castle was tied to Lady Dimitrescu. You go to the castle, you take care of Lady Dimitrescu, and then you move on to the next attraction.
mhm.
I think there did need to be more. There needed to be the ability to go back to these areas, and there needed to be a reason to go back to these
that
areas.
was that was the other thing, was that the game was did not let you know when you were going to get cut off. And that's especially annoying if you're like a completionist. Like, I had to just give up like the goat hunt and other things because I got locked out not knowing I was going to get
Oh
locked
yeah,
out.
I my
And the game is just it looks like it's open Metroidvania, but it's really not. It's even more linear than 4, because 4 at least had open areas and it would let you know before you're going to leave that open area.
yeah,
Yeah.
and 4 also had the aspect you could go back anywhere you wanted. Really, it left the whole
For a
village.
while at least,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like in the first 2 chapters, like the village is wide open. You uncover more of it, but you're able to go back and forth between as you please, until you move on to the castle. And then it's the same situation with the castle, Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Delilah.
wish you could have gone back into like Louise's house, the castle, just to really clean up right before that last mission. There are some moments where you can loop back to the vineyard on the boat to get like a treasure, and that's really cool because you're in the castle. But then I wish they would have just opened the door
Yeah.
so I can go back in and do what I want in
Yeah,
there
like
Yeah,
if
because
I
there's
so
that
please.
dungeon. There's that dungeon right there. It's completely optional.
you were back in the
Um,
dungeon, but you weren't really back in the
yeah,
dungeon. It was
It was like its own door,
yeah.
like as if like once you go in, there's only one way out. You can't like unlock another door to get into the main castle, which would have been really fun.
Yeah,
Um,
and there needed to be. I feel like to have this, they had this interconnected village, but they didn't really make the levels in it interconnected. It was still just very much one linear path, and that's also really evident in how the main key functions throughout the game. You're getting new pieces to build on this key, but if you really think about it, and I'm talking about the winged one, in
yes,
case you're wondering, if you realize like there aren't that many doors that opens, and every time, like when you get the winged key and it's just the two wings, you open every door for it before you move on to get the next attachment for it, and then there's only a certain number of doors that opens. No optional thing is opened using
yeah.
those doors. It's
And
every
every time you open a door, you close one.
yeah.
It's very much the illusion of a Metroidvania design.
Yeah.
yeah, like there was this one guitar key that you get from the Beneviento section
Hmm.
that you use to open a door in the village. I wish there were more moments like that
Yes,
where you
definitely.
have to go back to another area to like how cool would it have been to find like two doll pieces in the castle that you can use to unlock something in the Beneviento house or something, just to
Right.
like keep that level of
Yeah,
exploration.
like make other doors inaccessible in the castle until you get a key later on that you can then go back and open up. Like maybe
Yeah,
Heisenberg had his own chambers within the castle. So once you get Heisenberg's key, you can return back to the castle and open that up and find like something really cool, or find a really hard like enemy that's hiding there for some reason, you know? There needed to
yeah, and
be something like that, I feel.
they did have that to a level because I thought that there were some really cool enemies in this game that if you beeline through the main story, you're totally gonna miss. Like they had the alpha werewolf, and a few of the giant like axe dudes
Oh,
sprinkled
dude, the
around.
giant. If you went back to get the Bienvenido treasure, the giant that's
Yeah.
guarding it,
Yeah,
he's
like
guarding.
that's
There's
really
another one,
cool.
another treasure as well. But like, you pump like 5, 6 fucking grenade rounds into him, and he's still standing. Like,
Yeah,
I thought it was really fucking cool when there's the optional path at the reservoir where you can go to get the Wolfsbane Magnum, and
yes,
right after you get it and walk out of that house, you're given a reason to use it. There's a one of those giant ass werewolves there,
yeah.
and it was great because the Magnum was called Wolfsbane, and then there's a
Hmm.
giant werewolf. I shot him twice and he was dead. It was awesome. It was
Yeah.
truly exceptional moment. And the village had a lot of those, right? Like as you
Hmm.
go on, you unlock new paths and new places to explore, and that was great. It needed to be on a grander scale. It needed to take
Yeah.
us back to the Dimitrescu Castle. It needed to take us back to House Beneviento. But the way that they structured those areas to be very specific, laser focused attractions, that the castle being like the old Resident Evil style mansion that you're opening rooms and constantly exploring, even though it's very obviously very linear. House Beneviento being a very big puzzle focused area. I don't know what the fuck they were going for with Moreau's Reservoir. Um,
well, Moreau Island, the island of Dr. Moreau.
I
It's
mean
a book. Yeah.
I don't mean uh
Oh, you mean
inspiration
from like a
wise.
game,
I mean,
like
yeah, I
design
mean from like
perspective? I
what
gotcha.
what brand of horror, what style of gameplay they were going for there. It was kind of just like a puzzle area, but it was very linear,
It was
and it
purely a giant boss arena. Like, I
yeah.
think that is really it. Yeah.
And like what is cool is that's the one of the four areas where you get a part of Rose that you get right at the beginning. So
Yeah.
instead of going through the area to find that, you get it right away, and then you spend the rest of it trying to escape. That aspect is interesting. It just wasn't the area itself just wasn't very interesting. You're trying to escape this flooded area, this reservoir that he's constantly a threat in, but nothing's really complicated. It's all very linear, and it's more so trying to create stress while not being a very stressful situation.
It's trying to be Del Lago from
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4. But what made that interesting is it was always the entire encounter. It's not very long and it's entirely focused on the combat.
Right.
And it's very cinematic as opposed to this where like you're pushing things around and if you just happen to be in a certain spot when he's nearby, he'll swallow you and
Yeah, it was supposed to be like the gross area, and I think
yeah.
it helped freshen up the gameplay a little bit. Like that section was played completely different from the other 5 sections, and they all felt very different. But from coming from the Beneviento house going to the reservoir, it definitely felt like a dip in like excitement and intensity.
Well, actually, let's go back a smidge because I agree with you. It was coming from that area. It was definitely. I mean, I think the whole game is downhill from House Beneviento. But can we talk about why?
Yeah,
Because how fucking scary was House Beneviento?
Demon
Dude.
fetuses.
Oh
I
my
mean,
god.
There's very few things that I've seen that disgusting in a video game.
I mean,
One of them is the man centipede, whatever in Demon Souls, and even that wasn't as grotesque looking as
Man
that infant.
Centipede and Demon Souls.
And it's
Yeah.
not even the how it looks that at least to me made it scary. It was the noises it made. Like it
Yeah.
like it
Well,
was like a completely normal baby. Yeah.
It was a very fucked up area, right? Because like the whole thing with Donna is that she uses these flowers to make people hallucinate.
You're basically getting high the entire time.
Yeah, and like she kind of makes you hallucinate Mia, and she makes you hallucinate. You lose all your stuff, and you go down into this basement, and then you have to solve a puzzle. And there's a doll of Mia that you're disassembling and finding clues and pieces of the puzzle that you're running back and forth. And like this room is what I wish was more involved or more incorporated into the castle, right? Running back and forth between rooms with new pieces of the puzzle to move forward. It needed to be on a grander scale, I think. But they had this very tight focused area built around that entirely. And yeah, it's getting spookier and spookier. You come back from the music box and that one painting, the one string snaps and it looks like a painting of a woman hanging.
A pregnant woman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you see and that's actually a good point that I kind of want to evaluate in a little bit. You see like hallucinations of Mia and you hear recordings of her talking to you. You get a phone call from her and stuff. Like Donna is really fucking with you in this area, and it all comes to a head when this fucking giant like fetus baby thing starts crawling through the hallways screaming and whining and crying and saying dada. And by the way, did you guys get killed by that
from
thing?
it Metal Gear Solid style.
Did you get killed by it?
Yeah, it's such a cool animation.
Yeah, and it's instant death. I got killed in that last area where you go to get the fuse, and it's one linear section, and I couldn't. I was like, how the fuck are you supposed to get past it? Turns out you're supposed to hide under the bed.
Well, see, I hid under the bed, but you can't turn to see the other way. So I thought that he was.
You can still back up.
Yeah, you could back up, but I couldn't see like how far to like behind me he was to like go to the other side.
I think you could enter the bed under the bed from either side of it. So I always went around to the other side of the bed and crawled under. So once the baby comes through the door and just kept going, I was like, oh, this is my cue. Let's go.
Yeah.
And the game did great foreshadowing with that encounter because the way it had those like lockers stay like in every room. and when you're exploring, trying to get out of the room, you notice that you can open them and there's nothing in them.
Yep.
And
You're
they
like, I'm
look
gonna have
just
to
like,
hide in there.
yeah, they look just like the lockers from Resident Evil because you can just step in them and then lock yourself in. I'm like, or not Resident Evil, I'm sorry, Metal Gear Solid. Um, and I'm like, oh shit, what's gonna go
Wait,
down
were there
here?
other places you could hide in other than
There were
under the bed?
lockers.
There were
There were
several
lockers all over.
lockers.
Oh, I never even did that. I just ran.
And you could see through the slits just like in Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah,
Oh.
or in Outlast.
Wow, I did not even know that. I literally just ran from it the whole time. Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that it was like the fucking fetus in PT that you find in the sink.
Mm-hmm.
But like
giant.
giant. Like that's exactly what it looked like. It was fucked up.
Yeah.
Like something out of Berserk. Like
It was very, very scary. That whole area. And that's kind of why, like, I think from a gameplay perspective, the castle was definitely the best attraction. But from
A horror game.
a horror game, yeah, from
Yeah.
an attraction, from an experience, yeah, House
Yeah.
Beneviento,
Yeah.
man, just fucking
had they
top-notch
found
shit.
a way had they found a way to integrate everything that worked with House Bienvenido into like an area or maybe multiple areas of the castle, expanded the castle, and then just cut out everything that came after, it would have been an infinitely better experience, I feel like.
House...
Yeah. Sorry, I'm smirking at
I know, that's exactly what I'm like. Yeah, House Bienvenido.
Bienvenido. Welcome. It's okay. Yeah, and this part also had some really cool puzzles, actually, now that I think about it. Like, I remember in Resident Evil 7, the picture you get of Mia in the beginning of the game is completely useless, like, with the exception of reading the back of it. This one, they actually have you use that family photo to enter the house, which
Yeah.
actually took me a while to figure out because I was used to that just sitting in your inventory for no reason. So having to like submit that was really cool. And then yeah, when you go to the mannequin of Mia and you have to like match it, not that it was complicated, but I thought it was fun to like look at the different areas on her eye or on the arm to match the plaques and the door that you have to
Yeah.
unlock. And also cleaning the ring. You know how long it took me to figure out that the code was on there? I just cleaned it and like kept it moving. Like, oh, maybe I have to put this on the mannequin or something. And then found out later that there was actually a code in the ring. Those are some cool puzzles.
Yeah.
Once again, not complex, but one of the better ones.
It was still like it was well done, right? And was another way of harkening back to classic Resident Evil, getting key items and examining them to find clues and figuring out the way forward, running back to different rooms with new pieces of the puzzle. It's just, I feel like they took a lot of these things that have always worked in Resident Evil and kind of are part of what makes the franchise what it is, but they split them up into different areas, and that overall is what made it kind of a weaker experience overall.
Yeah.
Is I wanted those two best parts of the game, in my opinion, the castle and House Beneviento, combined into one grander thing.
Yeah.
And
I think what they were going for was the way that Resident Evil 4 changes locales like it does. The difference, I think, is that with this game, they tried to also change like fundamentals of the underlying design in each area, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the castle felt a lot like Resident Evil 2 or like getting stalked by Mr. X. The Maru's Reservoir, like you said, was that section in Resident Evil 4. And the factory was also from Resident Evil 4 too. Like it had some, like there was a factory in Resident Evil 4 from what I remember.
It was like a big lab on an island.
I would
harken to that. Yeah,
it was basically a James Bond level at that point.
Which once again,
there was the knife fight with Hauser and all that shit. Like,
Krauser
or Krauser. I'm sorry, Hauser.
Although the factory and reservoir area were inferior to the castle and House Beneviento, in my opinion, I liked that I was fighting different enemies in both. Well, actually, different enemy in Maru's Reservoir because there wasn't anyone else really except him as a giant fish. But and that was cool because like I didn't have to fight a bunch of things in that area, so I kind of like that it was just that enemy. But in the factory, you have like all these different armored versions of the zombies, for lack of a better word. Just kind of like you have like the ones with the like VR looking mask that you have to
Yeah.
shoot off to get a headshot on them, and you had the ones with like crazy armor that you had to shoot a bunch of times in order to kill and then get their weak spot. So I thought it was a nice way to mix up the gameplay to make it feel fresh, but those sections just felt like still downhill despite it feeling like I'm not doing the same shit over and over again.
Yeah. And I did feel like the factory, it had its moments. I definitely like the verticality of it. You as you progress in through the level, like you unlock you enable the elevator that the Duke is sitting in to go up to different levels and lets you go back to earlier portions, which you need to do in order to move forward at some point. I did really like that. It's still like, it seemed like a weaker castle where it was kind of labyrinthine but it was still very linear. And
it was weird. Oh, sorry.
No, I go ahead.
All I was gonna say is it was weird tonally to me. It felt like a weird, in a game that seems almost exclusively aesthetically very much in that gothic Van Helsing type Solomon Kane-esque lane. It was a weird like steampunk edition that I felt like just didn't fit. And it was trying to be, like you said, another castle, but it felt out of place.
And I also found it really odd that you go to the castle and that's where you handle Lady Dimitrescu. You go to House Beneviento, that's when you handle Donna. You go to the Reservoir, that's where you handle Moreau. The game structures that you go to the Stronghold, which is where the Lycans' lair is, and you fight the big Lycan with the
mallet.
Yeah, you fight him and
the mallet and the beard.
Yeah, you fight him. You go down. You get the last piece you need for Rose, and on the map it marks off, okay, Heisenberg's done, but he's not. He's very much alive, and you still have to go to his actual area. And then I just found it really odd that the last big attraction was kind of after you made the thing. You create the Giant's chalice at that point, and that's where you place it, and then you go. It takes you to a completely separated area, and that's Heisenberg's domain. It seemed very strange structurally.
It implies that Heisenberg had a bigger part in the story than he actually did.
Well, to be fair, they did kind of establish that he's kind of the odd man out, right? He doesn't like his position as one of Miranda's daughters, and I guess that was kind of their way of showing he's very separated from son. Children, that's the word that covers all Spawn. He's not happy with his position as a child of Miranda, and I guess this is kind of symbolic of his separation from that scenario, right? He's off on his own section over a bridge across a river, and that's where his factory is. And you go there, and he actually is asking Ethan to join him in killing and stopping Miranda because he wants to have control, which is something that Ethan just can't get behind. But I guess that's what they were going for. It was just a little strange structurally to me.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But the factory, towards the end, especially after you make Heisenberg's key, where they turn off all the lights and some of the bigger, stronger mech guys start coming out at you, especially in like linear corridors where it's hard to get around them. Like, it did have some stressful, spooky moments going on there. Just it didn't come close to what the castle achieved or what House Beneviento achieved. And like I said, it was still exceedingly linear. I want a new Resident Evil game where I can get lost. And that's kind of been the problem with this return to form, is it still feels like a half measure.
Yeah.
Like I that's what I called 7, because even though the Baker mansion and plantation was pretty big, it still paled in comparison, and it was impossible to get lost in. And
Well, I feel like but the Baker House, I feel like as a section did it better in terms of exploration and getting lost in it and backtracking, because you could go to any part of the Baker House within that section until you moved on. Then the rest of the game,
Agreed.
in my opinion, was really weak. Which this game, although it was way more linear in terms of like disjointing, there's that word again. Each section where you can't like go back in between them. I felt like I had more fun playing all the other sections as a whole in this game than I did the last half after I left the Baker section in 7.
that's fair. That's fair. And to your point, like 7 does give you a reason. It forces you to go back to older areas, and there's more to find and unlock and explore. And that I love that. That's kind of what I wanted more of here, outside of just the village, because everything that you unlock more sections of the village as you go on, but it's all optional. You don't have to do any of it. It's all just for optional treasures to increase your wealth.
You can count also those areas on like one hand.
Yeah, well, I think it does exceed one hand, but I get what you're saying. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
It is disappointing in that regard. It's really, really cool. There just wasn't enough.
Right.
Yeah. I think, yeah, more sections in the castle and just being able to go back after you go to Maru's Reservoir or House Beneviento would have solved, I think, a lot of our complaints, because gameplay-wise, it was still very fun.
Yeah.
To fight the different types of enemies.
Quite frankly, if they had known the reaction there would have been to the marketing around, because I think they only showed the castle area really in the marketing specifically because they didn't want to spoil the rest of it.
They showed some.
I think they underestimated how well people would receive that castle area. I think if they had known, they would have focused the story of the game around that area,
or at least made that a bigger
part of it. Yeah.
And then I feel like a lot of them are not weighted equally or well enough, at least. Like the castle could take you upwards of 2 to 3 hours. You're not spending that much time at House Beneviento or the Reservoir.
Yeah, the house can be done in. Isn't there a trophy to do it in like a few minutes, or an achievement, or some sort of achievement in the game?
No, it's there's just a single speedrun trophy, but
it's for everything, not just the house.
It's for everything. I guess something we haven't talked about yet, with regards to these attractions, the boss fights. Set aside the locations themselves, what was your guys' favorite boss fight?
Again, the first one.
Dimitrescu was your favorite boss fight? Okay. Well, this is a stumper.
I feel like Dimitrescu was the classic one, right?
Yeah.
It felt like a Resident Evil boss, and even Heisenberg to an extent, except in the beginning you fought in this like giant mechanical thing, which was actually pretty fun.
Speaking of Michael Bay, that was very, very Michael Bay Transformers.
Yeah. You basically get into an Autobot.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like aesthetically, my favorite fight was against the Beneviento ventriloquist.
Yeah.
Just like the dolls and stuff, like I was more freaked out, but it was such a simple thing. Like there was no combat.
You play hide and seek.
It was hide and seek, exactly. So like I can't say from a combat perspective it was my favorite, just aesthetically and how like tense it made me feel. Because once Lady D transformed into that flying thing, I was like, oh, that's cool, but like I don't know, I kind of wanted to fight her as she was, because she could punch the shit out of me. I mean, she grabbed a vanity and like flung it across the room without any problem. I feel like it might have been more interesting to just fight her as she was, but it's Resident Evil, so I figured they would do that to her.
Mm-hmm.
My only or I would say my comment on the Bienvenido fight is that in my opinion, at least, it doesn't really hold up more than once you play it once. Like the first time you play it, it's great, but
they do. I think there is some randomization on I think the first area that Angie is in is always the same, but I think it can change between 2 in the second and 2 in the third. It can change locations, but it's still not hard. Once you know it, you pretty much know it.
Yeah.
I think after the first boss fight, it's kind of a toss up between Moreau and Miranda because even though Miranda wasn't necessarily a good villain or well executed villain, her fight I did like the stages and the mechanics
It was a
of
good
it.
final boss fight for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Her boss design was so dope. It
Yeah.
reminded me of like the Dancer of Boreal Valley in Dark Souls.
And what's even
3 was
cooler
it?
is they had several because she had like so many different forms. She had like a spider form and
Yeah.
several
The bird
others.
form.
Yeah.
And there were full mechanics, like you had to
Mhm.
take out those balls before they exploded. There were fucking
Yeah.
tentacles coming out of the ground.
Yeah.
It was very Dark Souls-esque. And it really went all in with the whole gothic feel.
Yeah, and it was a very good. That might honestly be my favorite boss fight of the game.
Same. Yeah.
But I
And
do
and
also.
you also had to learn how to block at that point. Like you could get away the whole game not blocking on like standard difficulty. And I know I haven't played hardcore yet, but I know for 7 blocking is a major mechanic that you need to use even though 7 wasn't as action focused as this game. You still need to block to succeed, especially against Mia. Um but in that fight, even on standard, you needed to block because in 2 like fireball hits, she'll kill you.
Um, and I did want to echo. I do overall agree. I like the for that first time experience, the Angie boss fight or the Donna boss fight, whichever you want to call it. Yeah, that first time experience is like it was so I died because I couldn't find her. My first
Yeah.
try, like it was very stressful, and watching the doll start to twitch the more time goes on and shake
Yeah.
even more violently, like it was very very unsettling. But yeah, once you know it, you know it,
Hmm.
and that kind of takes away. I almost wish on Village of Shadows difficulty, it's kind of disappointing coming from Madhouse on 7 where like some pretty big things are changed up. Not all that much is changed up, but some things are changed up to an unsettling degree. In this game, the way it's structured, there kind of isn't much that they could shake up and change. There's
Mm,
some there. There's like new enemies and stress points where it makes it really difficult unless you take them out and you're not expecting them. So um that is kind of cool, but like I kind of wish for like that boss fight they had completely changed her locations, and but they don't, they stay the same. So
yeah.
I knew exactly where to go and I was done within a minute. If they had changed
Yeah.
that up on that difficulty, oh my god, that would have been incredible because it would
Hmm.
have it would
Hmm.
have made it into a whole new experience and an even more stressful one.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
And decreasing the time between when you need to find her and before you get hit by the other
Hmm.
dolls and
Yeah.
whatnot.
I mean, they could have. Maybe they did decrease that time, but I didn't know because I already knew where to go.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, it's like they could have changed it from 1 minute of not stabbing her to 40 seconds of not stabbing her, but I knew exactly where to go, so I was never going to reach that threshold of time.
Yeah.
So, um, let's, I guess, pivoting off of that, we could talk a little bit about the gameplay, or as I put it here, the gunplay. How do the guns feel?
Yeah,
Better,
fine.
better or worse than the first game,
Better.
or
Which
Yeah.
7
makes
rather, I
sense.
should say.
He was reading that Kendo's book, you know?
Oh yeah, that. Oh shit! Thank you. That's another thing I wanted to bring up. Is like some more Easter eggs. There was a kendo book in their house at the beginning, and there was
Yeah.
also a book by George Trevor about
Mm.
European architecture.
Hmm.
Um, the Trevor family was something added in the original or the Resident Evil remake, with the Trevor family being long time like workers for Spencer. I thought those were great touches, and I was geeking out like within the first 5 minutes seeing that shit in their house. I was
Yeah.
really, really happy about that. Thank you for reminding me that existed.
That first section was full of Easter eggs. They even had the little bobblehead that you break in Resi 7.
Yeah.
He was like, "Why do I have this?" I'm like, "Yeah, Ethan, why do you have this? You want to remember?"
There were a lot. Yeah, there were a lot of really great Easter eggs. But anyway, yeah. I guess Delaila and I, we can talk about how the DualSense felt with this game since we played it on PS5. Sorry, Jason, you're the odd man out here.
It's all right. I have other things to talk about with the gameplay.
But how did you feel? How did you feel about the DualSense integration, Delaila? Did it feel like it enhanced the experience?
It didn't enhance it that much, just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
With the way the different guns feel.
You didn't feel like you were shooting a gun for real?
No.
What a ripoff. Come on, Sony.
I thought it was. I mean, obviously, it doesn't feel 1-to-1 with that. They're never gonna achieve that with the controller. But I thought it was very good. Like, there's some more leeway at first, but then, like, the snap of a candy cane when you actually pull the trigger. There was lots of tension, and once you pull it fully, it releases as you would expect from a real firearm. I thought it was a nice touch that it did enhance the experience. It's a fucking nightmare if you're playing Mercenaries. Turn that shit off if you're playing Mercenaries because it will severely fuck up your day. When you wanna kill things and kill them fast, throw realism out the window. Turn off the DualSense or the adaptive triggers.
Good to know.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought...
it used it fine. It wasn't as like noticeable as Returnal or like Astro's Playroom, but it definitely used it in a way that it didn't feel more immersive. It was cool.
Okay, I thought it was pretty well immersive, and. Yeah, I mean that's like you're never gonna get that 1-to-1 feeling. I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think overall the gunplay as a whole, the aiming, the firing, how the guns actually performed. Obviously, there was a bit of a wider variety.
Yeah.
Than Resident Evil 7. Overall, they did make it feel much better. Which is kind of a shame as well. I don't know if I guess this can be thrown in with gunplay. Something that I came to realize while playing this game, and it kind of retroactively made me like 7 less, is with these first person Resident Evils.
Yeah.
The way the maps are designed, even when you're not indoors, when you're outside, you're essentially just running around tables shooting at an enemy. That's the level design.
Yeah.
As opposed to and this is one of the reasons why Resident Evil 4 still holds up so well even today, is that you were given so many options. You were given an area with buildings that you could go in and out of. You could choose which ones. There were different ways to cover them up. You can go out on rooftops. You can go after different weapons and such. You could, and depending on what the scenario was, you would have to last for a certain amount of time, take out certain enemies. This game, you're kind of just a few enemies are thrown at you, and you basically just run around a table, and they follow you, and you shoot them until they're dead.
Yeah, I think like against the daughters, it was a little more clever because you like have to open a window to make them cold. But against Lady D, yeah, like when you're running around the rooftop or even when she's stalking you in the house, she's so easy to avoid. Like she takes forever to hit you. She stands there, she looks pretty, she takes her claws out, and then you could kind of just like go under her in that moment.
Have you watched the videos of people just standing in the doorway of the merchant or the Duke's room, and she just stands there and looks at them?
I mean, I've done that.
Well, there you are. And people were just like fucking taking her out and like pouring ammo into her from the Duke's room.
Yeah.
And she just stands there and looks at you.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And I think with 7, the goal was obviously to make like a more claustrophobic environment. So that's kind of why I feel like it's more forgivable in that game.
Hmm.
It's kind of a situation where you're locked in a house and you're trying to get out of it, and it kind of makes sense there. This is like a whole ass village
Yeah.
with like bigger
Right.
areas and a larger scope. Um,
And so many of the buildings are locked off to you for most of the game that like you're literally just running around them.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, I'm just happy that the handguns don't feel like BB guns in this one. They actually do feel
Yeah.
impactful and like they're doing something. 'Cause that
Yeah.
was that was probably my biggest complaint about Seven's guns as a whole was a lot of the shotguns felt pretty good, the handguns felt like nothing, and other than like the flamethrower, and some other weapons like there was a magnum you could get. There really wasn't much variety in 7, understandably so. It would be kind of odd if you're stuck in this Louisiana bayou house and you suddenly find like a whole arsenal of ARs and whole variety of weapons. Here it's like there's an actual merchant that can give you shit. I guess it kind of makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Can we mention the Duke for a second, just because we didn't
Yeah,
with
we haven't
story
really
and
talked about the
characters?
Duke.
Because I feel like with the Duke, they entirely missed the point of the merchant in Resident Evil 4. Because when you actually read the notes, like the Duke is actually a character that is acknowledged in this story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
And
necessarily think that they were trying to recreate the merchant like one to one, you know? It's not like they wanted to have another character that sold you shit that was inconsequential to the plot.
but my point is that the Duke and the way he's integrated in this plot makes no sense and creates even more plot holes. Like why the fuck does
Yeah.
this guy who sells guns have a secret room in your castle that nobody else can enter? And just
Including you.
including your enemy and including you,
Yeah, and
yeah.
also when you look at the guest log while entering the castle, the Duke is one of the guests, and it's to discuss
Yeah.
business. So it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's one
And
of
why
those.
does the Duke selectively reveal information that he already knows over the course of the game, like
He
just like
is
Chris?
he's tantalizing. Like he after you fight each boss, like after you fight Angie or Benevento House, he holds a doll in his hand or
A
after you
Canoe.
fight yeah, the Kadu,
Hmm.
right, the Kadu. Or after you fight the fish guy, he holds like something nasty in his hand. He's a little spicy, that one.
And he always has something to say when you sell the treasure of the boss
Yeah.
to him. He always has something to say about it, which is cool. I think he's a compelling character, but he does create issues in the plot of why is he helping, like they're trying to keep him as a mystery just like the
Right.
merchant, but they're still incorporating him into the events that are going on by having him have an actual relationship with these lords and these characters, and it just raises the question of why is he helping me.
And why are the enemies letting him help you?
Yeah, that too.
And it's I thought the twist was going to be that he's using you the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
like he's working for Mother Miranda. But again, at the end of the day, Mother Miranda was using you the entire time too. It's just again, it's so
Yeah,
convoluted
no,
and
I agree with you. His character design's dope though.
yeah, no,
So many
definitely.
times I was just staring at him, especially when he was smoking a cigar because the cigar animation was really good.
And he'd have
But
he had plenty of things to say, like funny things to say, and plenty of like little idle animations where he'd start dozing off and he'd jerk back up when you'd want to talk to him.
yeah.
Obviously, there was the Resident Evil 4 reference.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
says, "What are you buying?" Just a thing an old friend of mine used to say,
Right.
which is great for a long time fans of the franchise. Also, another line that I know Jason asked me about, and of course I recognized it immediately. Fighting Heisenberg, and he said, "I'm gonna kill that boulder punching asshole." Talking about Chris, definitely got a good kick out of that. I uh,
Yeah.
I enjoyed I enjoyed when they leaned into the meminess and the hilarity of past Resident Evils and acknowledged it in this game. I did enjoy that quite a bit. All right, I guess let's talk about I guess a little bit of the progression. We've talked about going around the village getting treasures, but like hunting these down, selling them, and kind of going back, harkening back to kind of a meshing of Resident Evil 4's upgrade system, um, and Resident Evil like 2 and 3 remakes upgrade systems where you're getting weapon parts and attaching them to get enhancements in your guns. Um, I mean, I was happy because that was one of my favorite things about Resident Evil 2 remake was hunting down these parts. I think it's disappointing that a lot of them were just bought.
Yeah.
Again, it all comes down to I wish there were more puzzles. I wish there
Yeah,
were
I
more
would have
puzzles.
preferred to find them as well in the world. But I did like that you didn't have to put things in storage. Like your storage was with you if you purchased the storage.
Right.
I so I'm mixed on the return of like the attaché case.
Hmm.
Because if you're like me and the first thing you do is buy extra space, then the game does become a little easy.
I never ran out of space in my normal playthrough. The only time I ran out of space was just when I was hoarding ammo because I bought infinite ammo for my guns and I
Right.
wasn't using
Mm.
ammo anymore. It's the only time I ran out of space because I was just hoarding shit to eventually
I
sell.
do that too, even when I do
Yeah.
infinite ammo runs. I still get everything I can.
I grab everything and I just sell it because having more money is always nice. But
Right.
like I never ran out of space and the I feel like a lot of that has to do with the fact that they broke out crafting materials into like their own storage and their own menu. So like I was never pressed for space because my herbs and my gunpowder and none of that stuff was ever taking up room. There was no
Yeah.
max on that stuff. It was all just going into its own separate container.
Yeah, that was the interesting. I think they made a mistake making crafting separate
Yeah, I
from the main container.
it didn't it felt like a horror game, not a survival horror game in that
Right.
regard, because you would almost never run out of space. Um,
But
during a
yeah,
normal playthrough.
and depending on the setting, I would prefer the survivor horror aspect of it, where you have to manage your inventory. In this game, you didn't really have to, but I feel like that came in handy when you ran into those optional mini bosses in the village.
Mhm.
Because had I had to like start fighting the boss and then I ran out of ammo and I had to run back, I feel like it would have took me out of it a little bit.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I could see that and I could agree with that. Um, I was happy selling my weapons to the Duke. They kept all their upgrades. I was going to be really upset if I sold something and um it would lose all its upgrade progress because eventually you reach a point where you definitely can't fit all the guns, but there's also no reason to fit all the guns in your inventory. But luckily they retain all their progress.
I don't know, man. I had like 6 guns in my case at one point with plenty of room for ammo and everything else.
I mean,
Same.
I 6 guns is one thing, but like 12 is you're not fitting all that.
Right. No, I know.
That's what I'm getting at. I guess another point of progression was the cooking. Did you guys find this to be a meaningful addition?
Not really. I mean, it was like cool backtracking to get the different animals. I hate killing animals, but whatever. Slaughtering a goat, no doubt. What I did think was cool was the special animals that you can kill to upgrade, like the blue bird that you have to find a picture of to know where it is. Then you have to go to the location in the picture and then kill it and then get that special meat.
Yeah.
And there was a phantom fish and there was also like a albino pig or something like that. That specifically, that element of it was cool, but other than that, I didn't feel like it added much to the game.
Yeah, and
Right.
two things on that. I liked that they kind of incorporated that Resident Evil 7 thing where you find a photograph and that photograph informs you of where you need to go in order to find that thing and you have to figure it out for yourself. They did that for those rare animals and I really liked that. I the key items section of your inventory drove me crazy because I'd kill that rare bird or I'd kill that rare pig or that rare fish and that picture would just always be in my inventory.
Yeah.
And it's like, I did the thing. Can you throw
Yeah,
this
they could
away?
have at least put an X on it or something.
Or they didn't
Yeah.
do the thing that they usually do in past Resident Evils, where when you use a key and it no longer has a purpose, you toss it. They
Yeah,
didn't.
it
They
shows you that you don't need it anymore.
Right. They stopped doing. They didn't do that with this. So, and not that it's taking up inventory space. It's just adding to this list that's constantly getting longer,
So
and it's kind of frustrating.
when you do need to go into the menu and look at one of your key items, you're scrolling through
Yeah.
shit looking for it. Yeah.
It's like, if I don't need the thing, can you let me get rid of it, or can you just get rid of it? It's kind of just taking up. It's one extra thing that's just sitting there, not taking up any actual gameplay space, but it's a thing I have to scroll by to get to something else that I need. It's a minor complaint, but it's a complaint.
I also I'm curious what you guys felt about the combinable items, that if you find all the pieces and combine them before selling them, they have more value. Like, I felt like that was so easy to overlook, and thankfully I didn't, because I am very careful before I sell anything. But I feel like for some people that are just like, oh, it says valuable, let me just sell it, and doesn't like really pay attention to the / combinable next to that parentheses that's in very small lettering.
So
they could have just sold it.
They did more than Resident Evil 4 did. Because Resident Evil 4 like has the same thing, actually has a lot more of it and a lot more depth to it. But which I'll get to that point in a moment. They did. If you examine a treasure that has divots in it in 4, like, it'll tell you, like, it looks like it can fit like 3 jewels or something. You kind of have to go looking for that information. So I do appreciate that they did say this thing is combinable with something else.
Right.
I don't think they went far enough. It was only there was only one treasure that had 3 components. Most of them only had 2, and really that was like less than 10. There were like less than 10 combinable treasures.
And it would be like a doll that was cut in half, so it was pretty clear.
Versus like Resident Evil 4, where you'd get a mask that had 3 divots for 3 different gems, and you had to find all 3 of these gems and then combine that into the mask and then sell it. There were so many different treasures like that in 4 that like it really added to the explorability of searching for this thing that you can combine into this other thing, and you're waiting and searching so you can finally sell this thing at its full value. This game, the treasure.
It was just the necklace that did that.
Yeah, exactly. It was just that one treasure only had 3 components, and the rest of them were really simple, just double component treasures.
Yeah.
Jason, what were you gonna say?
I think all I was gonna say was, to Delilah's point that people might rush over it, I think this game actually went too far trying to train people not to actually look at and examine key items. And I mean, you have to do so to solve a lot of puzzles that are required to get through the game.
Yeah.
So I thought it did a good job of making it clear up front. And this goes all the way back to how you get the screwdriver all the way back at her house.
I do think that was a good way to tutorialize the examining and interacting with key items, because they don't even let you leave viewing the key item until you examine it like that. And I think that was a solid way to kind of force and ease the player into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess, but going back to my issue with the key items thing, not leaving when you don't need them anymore, it's a little inconsistent, because some things do leave your key items list, some things don't, and it's just like, I just wish there was more consistency with that, because there was not really any reason to like hold on to the Dimitrescu key once you're out of the castle. You can't use it on anything else. Why is it still in my inventory?
I wish I could have, though.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to my point. I wish I could go back to the castle. I wish there was more to find. I guess besides that, there's lots of there's the Goats of Warding, which is like an arbitrary collectible they've been putting in like every Resident Evil since 7. Where there's just a thing hidden. There's like 20 of them. Find them. I think more interesting than that as like a collectible are like more so the challenges that you can do and the unlockables that you can get after you've beaten the game. Did you guys mess with any of that?
Yeah, I started to recently.
Okay.
Like breaking all the windows in the Dimitrescu castle, or like you can kill that big giant mallet like Urias, I think it's called.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you get a challenge for killing like 30 of the lichens in that section where the section you're really just supposed to run away when you don't have much ammo in the beginning of the game. But if you go back on New Game Plus, you'll have a lot of ammo or maybe
Speak,
infinite ammo. And
Speaking of which, just a real quick comment on that because I wanted to bring that up when we were talking about gameplay. That is such a poorly designed section that it's clear what they were trying to do. They were trying to do what Resident Evil 4 did, but it's what's the term for it? It's is this called a failsafe? What is the term called? It's a failsafe section where you have to lose essentially, and it doesn't, and it's telling you to survive the attack, and yet it's an unwinnable section, but it's telling you to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched so many streams after I played it of people. I just happened to survive long enough that I was thrown out into the river. But I watched so many streams of people getting so frustrated, and it's pretty clear why, as opposed to Resident Evil 4, where it's not time gated and it's dependent upon. I mean, a certain amount of time can pass, but you need to also kill a certain amount of Ganados in Resident Evil 4.
I think that's the trigger to move past it. Is like I think it's like 20 Ganados or something along those lines.
Yeah, or you can last out for a certain period of time, I think.
yeah,
But
I've seen people like climb a ladder and wait it out, I think.
Yeah.
But I do agree with that. Like it isn't terribly well designed. I saw like I was talking with a friend who started the game, and he had seen a lot of people suggesting to play it on hardcore mode because that enhances the experience, makes it more of a survival horror game because it's harder. He had to restart the game when he got to that section because on a fresh game, you get there, you don't have many resources.
Yeah.
It's impossible to survive it. I mean, it was hard on standard to survive that long enough to move on. They really kind of throw you in the deep end of the pool, and the deep end has sharks in it.
This game is not designed to be played on the hard modes first run.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
I totally agree. Even Village of Shadows was tough, and I had a full arsenal of infinite ammo, fully upgraded weapons, and there were times where that difficulty was giving me trouble.
Mm.
Not many, but like there were some.
Right.
They didn't give you like an OP weapon like they did in previous ones, like a rocket launcher, or in Madhouse on 7 they had that like that saw that you can use.
It's kind of based on like what you can bring, like how far you've progressed your weapons, because you can't like unlock infinite ammo for a gun unless you've upgraded it fully.
Gotcha.
And a lot of the best weapons take a lot to upgrade. Like
they're expensive.
The Stake Magnum is the best weapon in the game. It costs like a ton of lei to fully upgrade.
So you gotta like keep playing the game.
Mm-hmm. I think I had to do 3 full playthroughs before I could fully upgrade that and get infinite ammo for it.
Ay. And that's like collecting all the crystal skulls and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was getting all the
shit.
There was only okay. Let me caveat that one of those playthroughs was a speed run where I wasn't doing as much exploration.
In your first playthrough, did you buy ammo upgrades?
Mm-hmm. I mean, okay. I upgraded. I didn't want to do a thing where I conserved my money so I could get that later down the line. Like I played the game. My first playthrough, I played the game. I upgraded my guns
way you wanted to. Yeah,
exactly.
I did conserve because I didn't feel like I needed to upgrade until I fought Miranda. Okay. But then once I got to Miranda, I did like pop in some upgrades.
I didn't want to do any conservation. I wanted to play the game. I wanted to experience it. And like
which
this was
still
also
very doable without upgrades on standard.
And I did like a thing that I never even did in 4, where like every time a new gun popped up, I sold my old one and bought the new one. I didn't even do that in 4 to that extent.
I can't do that. It drives me crazy. I want all the guns, even though I don't need them.
Yeah, well, I mean, eventually I did buy them back and fully upgrade them, and then get infinite ammo for them and whatnot. But like when you get I feel like there's not many reasons to keep the older guns in this game like there would be, and like the best pistol or the best handgun is the last handgun you get. And
Yeah.
there's not really a reason to use the starter handgun over that one, even when the starter one is fully upgraded. It's not, there's no reason to do it. It's not worth it.
Hmm.
The older weapons don't scale well at any point. It's not like in Resident Evil 4, not to keep comparing the games, but there are a lot of comparisons to draw. Resident Evil 4 did a thing where when you fully upgrade any gun, it unlocks an exclusive upgrade that gives that gun a special benefit.
Herb,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like the striker shotgun, once you fully upgrade that, you unlock an exclusive upgrade for it that increases its ammo capacity to 100,
Mm-hmm.
versus like the riot gun, which I think gets like a really strong attack power upgrade, and so on and so forth. Each gun has its own exclusive benefit that makes it worthwhile if you ever want to fully upgrade one. Like there's a good enough reason to do it.
Yeah. How would you have felt if you could undo a gun upgrade? So let's say you upgrade that first handgun and then you get this new handgun to upgrade. How would you have felt if you could like buy back like the upgrades and respec them without having to like farm lay?
I don't know that
Nah,
there's
because
much of a
then,
reason to, you know? Go ahead.
yeah, not only would that there, not only is there not a reason to, which I think is a design flaw, but that takes away the consequences of your actions and makes
Yeah.
it less survivally. Survivally. I invented a word.
You did.
It makes it less survival horror and just more RPG light action. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
But is there anything else you guys want to talk about with the main game before we move on to the last few points that I want to talk about?
No, I mean, I feel like it sounds like we're really like negative on the game, and I just want to make it clear that I had a blast
No,
with this game.
I think Jason couldn't have put it better. I don't agree with the whole idea that it's a bad game, because I think like I don't think a bad convoluted or contrived writing necessarily takes the game down that far for me, because I still had a blast.
I specifically said not great, not bad.
At the beginning you did
Although,
say bad.
no, I said not great. Maybe I did say bad, but then at the end of
I
that
have a
little
recording of it,
diatribe,
I
I
think
Jason.
said
I think you
not
kept it
great.
vague because had you
Yeah,
explained yourself, then you would have gone too deep in the way we
yeah.
have as we went. So
Um,
I
I
get why you
agree.
said
I agree. It's not necessarily a bad game when you take everything into account holistically. I do believe, though, that as I thought about it more past the story into the gameplay, especially when looking back at four, um, like I said before when we were talking about gunplay, when you actually think about the gunplay, you're running around the table shooting at enemies until they die,
yeah.
as opposed to four, where you actually had to be tactical with what you were doing, and you had hordes of enemies thrown at you as opposed to just a few. Again, this goes to third person versus first person, the engine, what it's capable of. I don't think that this engine is capable of what RE4 was doing, just in terms of minimizing load times and whatnot. Um, Ultimately, at the end of the day, I had a blast playing this, like Delilah said. I don't think I'm going to ever really go back to this game in the same way that Resident Evil 4 holds up to this day.
Mm.
I think that's the thing, right? We're lobbing a lot of comparisons to Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 7, and like I hate to compare a game to another one and be like, well, it's not like this one, so it's worse. But it's like they really tried to catch. They
They
really wanted
brought
to
it on
have.
themselves, yeah.
Yeah, they were really trying to see if lightning could strike twice with this, and they did a lot of they recreated a lot of things that made a game like Resident Evil 4 and a game like Resident Evil 7. They recreated a lot of things that made those games great without fully understanding why those things made those games great.
Mm.
And it's kind of a downer. I mean, I really did have a blast with this game. I plowed through it like 5 times in a row and I did everything I could. I got every challenge completed.
Hell yeah.
When I didn't have to. I'd already had the plat, but I was like, you know what? I think I could bang this out in like an hour or two, and I did, and it was really fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. But when you look at the plot, like, it is really messy, and we're saying that it's messy when it's a Resident Evil game, and I understand the irony of that. But like, they are really trying to make this series a little more serious, and they're trying to take it more seriously in terms of its plot. And
Which I think is the problem.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I just think they need to think about it a little better before they move
Right.
forward, you know?
Right.
Like,
You can't do the schlocky. You can't make the schlocky Resident Evil 4-esque one-liners and kind of tonal aesthetic, and at the same time want us to be getting very emotional and taking the events seriously of what's going on.
I mean, I think Resident Evils 5 and 6 even took themselves seriously for most of the games. They weren't nearly as campy or schlocky as 4, but like, they were still better constructed stories. They still made more sense than this one, and didn't have these contrivances in place to push this dramatic twist forward like this game did. You know what I mean? Like I know 5 and 6 are kind of looked at or seen as the black sheep. I love 5. I think 6 is better.
I love 5 too.
I think 6 is a better game than people give it credit for. But they did have solid and well constructed plots, and that's kind of what this game lacked. So yeah, I guess that kind of sums up our general feelings with this game proper. We all really liked it. We just didn't like the story that it told very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's pretty well justified.
Yep.
I guess the last few things that I want to run through before we wrap this up, we can just rapid fire through these. Did you guys spend much time with Mercenaries?
No, I didn't spend any time.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I went through it. I spent some time with it, and I'm a huge Mercenaries fan. I've been waiting for Mercenaries to come back in a Resident Evil game for a long time now.
Yeah.
And I was very disappointed.
Did you ever play raid mode and Revelations?
No.
Okay. It's not the same, but I'm just curious.
I was disappointed because in this version of Mercenaries, it's not a horde mode. It's a set enemies in the same map over and over again. Now, obviously, the map was the same in the old school Mercenaries. It was the same. You pick a map and you go. But it's about how long can you last against a never-ending horde of enemies, as opposed to here, where kill this set amount of enemies positioned in the same place over and over again, and see how fast you can do it.
And it's also... Sorry, go ahead.
No, all I was going to say was it gets very repetitive very fast, because there's very little you can do to change how you're going to approach, that same level each time, as opposed to these open arenas you had in the older Mercenaries.
Well, I think the variation comes in because there is an RNG aspect, and that's the perks that you can get from the blue orbs that are in the maps, and those are randomized each time, and you have to pick one from a randomized set of 3.
Yeah.
And that's really what changes it up game for game. I'm a noted historically Mercenaries hater. I've never really clicked with the Mercenaries mode. I actually really liked this one. I think it's because there was that sense of predictability. You jump in, the exact same number of enemies are going to be present in each map every single time. They're all going to come from the same locations. The randomization of the perks is what really kept me interested in that. Every time I joined it,
I felt like the perks didn't do anything. Like, I felt like they affected almost nothing. But I mean, that was just me.
Maybe you didn't get to the harder maps. They really, really change up how you approach the harder versions of the maps when you unlock those. But yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. It's not something that I'm going to keep doing. There's like 3 maps that I didn't get a triple S rank on, and I'm not going to bother trying to get that because there's not really a point. It's the only thing in the game that I didn't do is get triple S ranks on all the Mercenaries modes or all the Mercenaries maps. But I don't There's no reward for
if
doing
that
it.
was
So
necessary. Yeah, imagine if that was necessary for a plot.
I mean, I don't think it would be very hard getting double S's, which I didn't need to do for an unlockable an unlockable lightsaber. By the way, pretty cool. Uh, it's not something that's really necessary for anything other than just like completion's sake. Like that was the thing that I did after getting the plat that I didn't need to do, but I was like, why not? I'll try it.
Mhm.
Is the lightsaber, could you use that in the main
Yeah,
story?
yeah. It was
Oh,
an unlockable
do you
weapon.
think that'll be like a nice Village of Shadows weapon to have?
I don't know. Like maybe it's
Okay.
probably better that you just get infinite ammo on fully upgraded guns.
Yeah. That would be
Honestly,
fun though.
yeah, it would be. Um, Too bad I unlocked it too late and I had already burnt myself out on the game.
Mm,
But yeah, I guess that's all to say about Mercenaries.
what color is the lightsaber?
It's like a red pinkish color.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's called like the LZ Answerer,
Mm.
and like it's like a lightsaber, and then when you block with it, it turns into a double-sided lightsaber. It's pretty
Oh,
cool.
cool.
Yeah. It's a post. I think the flavor text is that it's like some BSAA technology that or something. I don't know.
Comic book science, man.
Yeah, really. um do you guys we've mentioned it a couple times. Do you think there will be DLC for this game?
Of course.
I hope so.
I will say, like, so 7 got DLC'd like hell, but that's also because it shipped with nothing else to do besides the main game. 2 got some free after or post-launch content in the form of those Ghost Survivor stories. 3 didn't get anything, but it shipped with Project Resistance. This game is also shipping technically with Reverse, which has yet to come out technically. It comes out this summer. So that being said, we haven't had a Resident Evil game with DLC since 7 in 2017. So with that being said, do you think there will be DLC for this game?
If there is, I only want story DLC. I don't
Yeah,
want like
I think there will be a Chris DLC.
See, I
yeah.
think if anything, they'll add more Mercenaries maps. That's my cynical viewpoint.
Maybe.
I would like a Chris DLC that's like him and the Wolfhound Squad, fleshes them out a little more, and
Yeah.
maybe shows why they broke off from the BSAA, or them looking for more
Not
more
even
deets on.
Not even Kojima would stoop that low. The Wolfhound Squad.
I wouldn't go that far. I think he would probably come up with something worse. I mean,
Like
he did create
the Goose
Foxhound.
Hen Squad. Like
The Goose Hen Squad.
That's genius.
We got the Beauty and the Beast core in
that's true.
in 4. Yeah,
that's-
I think you're giving Kojima a little too much. I love the man, but you're giving him too much credit there. And I guess one more thing before we get to the final question. I think I have a feeling I already know the answer. Like, how does this game kind of fit into your rankings? Is it like on the higher end, the middle end, the lower end of like your Resident Evil rankings?
It's on the higher end for me, but with the caveat that I didn't play 5 or 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't say number 1 though. Resident Evil 2 Remake's still my favorite.
Okay.
But I may like this a little more than 7 as a whole. Although I
Okay.
like the first half of 7 better.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird. If it is better than 7, then not by much. They both outrank each other in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is somewhere in terms of the entire series, this is somewhere around the middle, maybe a little below the middle for me. There are definitely worse Resident Evil games you can play.
100%. I couldn't agree more with that. I would put this one roughly in the middle as well for me. It's a great game. Like I said, I had a blast playing it. It plays really well. It's got a lot of interesting ideas, but it's just too linear, and the plot just takes it down a lot for me.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we hit the final question?
No.
Nope.
All right. We kind of know, like, Resident Evils 1, 2, and 3, they're kind of a trilogy. And the same could be said for 4, 5, and 6. Kind of a trilogy. We know that this is seemingly going to be yet another Resident Evil trilogy. We had 7, we now have 8, and seemingly we're gonna get a 9. Who do you think we're gonna play as in that game? Because it's not gonna
Leon Kennedy.
Wow, locked and loaded.
I'm actually serious. I'm actually serious because we can't play as Chris for an entire game because he's just fucking Call of Duty super soldier.
Yeah.
It's implied that Rose is extremely superpowered OP. So how the fuck are we gonna play as Rose for an entire game?
Well, I guess that's kind of what I kind of want to bring up or mention, because I think it could be Rose. Because what if they completely turn the series on its head, and instead of like a survival horror game where you're someone armed with weapons, what if you're a bioweapon?
I'm out.
I think here's the thing.
I'm not even joking. Like, I'm just out at that point.
I think it would be a cool segment to play as Rose as a bioweapon, but have the rest of the game be your normies.
In the same way that you play as Chris for a segment, because that's essentially what he is. He's a super soldier. Like,
well, at this point in the timeline, so is Leon.
He's Captain America. Well, Leon way less so. Like, but if Leon were to come into the next game and he was just like base level, like he has training, but he's basically where he was at around Resident Evil 4.
But if it's Leon, I mean, how are they going to do that in first person? Because his bangs are constantly getting in his eyes.
That's true. You raise a
Leon's going to have to get a haircut. I think it's possible it could be Mia.
Maybe.
Huh.
If we want to keep this,
I would like that actually. Play as Mia most of the game, and then maybe have a section with Rose and a section with if Ethan's still alive with Ethan.
Yeah, God. Yeah, I thought Mia. It was these. Oh, Jason's really thinking about this.
Well, Mia, you could do interesting things story-wise because she was fucking captured and held in that dungeon forever. You don't know what happened in that time, so there could be psychological scarring that would actually like help make it a horror game again because she's fucked up and
I will say, like, I think Mia is a strong possibility because we still don't know much about this Connections organization, which Mia was employed by at some point. And we did play as Mia in 7 for a section, so it wouldn't be the first time we played as Mia. I think there's a good enough reason to justify playing as Mia in this one, and give us a section where we play as Rose, turn it on its head, you play as a bioweapon. I'll also say I know it's not the first time you've played as a bioweapon in Resident Evil. There's a section in Resident Evil 6 where you play technically as a bioweapon,
right?
But it could be cool from a first-person perspective. I think throughout the whole game, but if not, like for a section, a slice of the game, kind of like how a lot of Resident Evils have you do, it could be an interesting gameplay mechanic to throw in, I think.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to wrap this thing up?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you enjoyed this episode of Reap the Spoils, if you're listening on YouTube, give it a like, sub to the channel, leave us a comment, tell us who you think we'll be playing as in Resident Evil 9, or whatever else, tell us what you like, tell us what you didn't like about this episode, and we'll be happy to respond. Shout out to anybody that does that. Like, please, more people do that. And also, my Twitter handle is @Nibelheimian. Delilah's Twitter handle is @Assassina_San. Jalisa. Jesus Christ. Jason.
Bienvenido.
Jason's Twitter handle is @SolidClaws, but don't follow him. But if you do follow me and Delilah, like, I don't know about Delilah, but like, tweet at me, like, comment on my shit. I'm just like goofing around on there, and if you talk to me, like, I'll try to. I know I saw somebody tweeted back at me like a month ago, and I feel bad for not responding to them. Sorry about that, but like,
come on,
yeah, tweet at my tweet at me and talk to me. I want to engage with you people that listen to the show, and and comment on the show on YouTube if you do. If you listen
There's
on
also a Dead Cell Media tweeter.
Twitter, there is. I check that very
we're-
infrequently. So if you really wanna, oh yeah, that's at Dead Cell Meetup. But if you really want to talk to us individually or specifically, like, yeah, tweet at me directly. That's cool. I'd love to see more of that happen. We also have a Facebook group. You can follow the Facebook group. I don't go on Facebook. That's Delilah's domain as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, give us a rate and review the show, 5 stars preferred, and again, tell us what you like, tell us what you didn't like. Those help so much. Like, please review the show on
Please
Apple Podcasts.
review this review on our web zone.
If you listen on, even if you listen on like Spotify, but somehow like you have a way of getting to Apple Podcasts to rate and review the show, please, you have no idea how much it helps. It helps so much if you do that and like the show on YouTube. Like, please do it. I love you if you do it, please. And yeah, Delilah, what's the next game we're covering?
Near replicant
And
version, blah blah blah.
And we
blah.
meet it this time. So I know the scheduling got a little mixed up. It's because Near Replicant is a very long, big game that I didn't want to rush my cohorts through, and I didn't realize that we would need more time. So
you need all the weapons to unlock ending E. So
I kind of,
you're playing along with us.
Yeah. You should have plenty of time. We told you that was an episode coming. Well over a month ago at this point. Clearly it didn't come out on the time frame that we expected it to, but that's okay. You have plenty of time. You probably didn't even beat it yet anyway, so go ahead and get through it. Endings A, B, C, D, and E. Gotta get them all because we're gonna spoil all of them, so get through that and join us next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
See you later, folks.
Hey, we're back because we forgot to do the Kwasnicki rating. Hey, Jason, what do you rate this game?
I give this game... Oh, this is toughy. This is a toughie. I give it... Are you ready? 6.3 goats out of 10.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it.
Remember, folks, 5 is average.
All right. Now we're really done. Near Replicant's the next game. Go play it. Thanks for listening.